Everybody ready? Good evening, Farmington Hills. We ask that everyone please be seated. Welcome to the March 25th, 2024 regular session of the Farmington Hills City Council. I am now calling our meeting to order. And we begin, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And so I'm looking out, and let me see, why don't we have, let's see, Stephen, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, Steve.
Would you please call the roll?
Council members Aldred.
Here.
Fullaware.
Here.
Bridges.
Here.
Bruce.
Here.
Dwyer.
Here.
Knoll. Here. And Mayor Rich.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to approval of the regular session meeting agenda, I would like to read a statement. To the members of the community who are here this evening to request that this council issue a resolution regarding a ceasefire. Earlier this month, when council members Jackie Bolaware, Dr. Randy Bruce, and I were in Washington, D.C., for the National League of Cities Conference, we met with Senator Gary Peters, with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and Senator Debbie Stabenow's staff. At that time, we elevated concerns that our community members have shared with us over several meetings regarding a ceasefire in the Middle East and the suffering of innocent civilians. I also shared these concerns with Dan Coe, Deputy Assistant to the President and Deputy Director of White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. As a city council, we are doing what we have always promised. We are listening to the steadfast concerns of our constituents and serving as a conduit to county, state, and federal representatives to ensure that your voice is heard beyond this city hall. By having these conversations with leaders in Washington, we are directly elevating the community's concerns to the highest level. And we believe that this is the best course for meaningful action. For those observing the holy month of Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak, I appreciate your commitment to the community. We want to ensure that our Muslim community members wishing to participate in tonight's public comment are able to both share their concerns and break their fast. So out of respect for those observing Ramadan, I'm requesting a motion from City Council to amend tonight's agenda to move public comment to the end of our meeting. The intent for this request is to allow time for those observing Ramadan to participate in public comment following evening prayer and iftar. Is there a motion?
I would move, Madam Mayor, to move the public comment section of the meeting to the end just before additions to agendas. Is that where we're thinking of putting it?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, I would make that recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, support, Mr. Dwyer. Thank you. This is a regular vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed, same sign. All right, that passes. And so we'll be moving forward with the agenda as amended. This takes us to correspondence. Does anyone have correspondence that they would like to share this evening? Yes, Ms. Knoll.
I received an email, and I'm not sure if the rest of the council did as well. It's possible you did, but I'll mention it just in case you didn't. From a teacher at Farmington High School, Jesse Regic.
Nope.
Not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he read an article in the newspaper about Farmington Hills Sustainability and Technology Committee, and he's teaching or going to be teaching a class at Farmington on sustainability and was wondering if there's maybe a way we could work together. So I will forward the email on to actually both of you, because I know you're kind of spearheading the committee, and you as the mayor, I'll forward it on to both of you and
Thank
I'll
you
let
so
you
much.
respond.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Any other correspondence? Okay, then we shall move on to the consent agenda. We have a rather lengthy consent agenda this evening, items 6 through 26. All items listed for the consent agenda are considered routine, administrative, or non-controversial by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items may be removed from the consent agenda for consideration. And it'll be read by our Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Number 6, recommended approval of a special event permit for Farmington Community Library to hold food truck Tuesday starting May through August 2024. Item 7, recommended approval of amendment to the rules of the City Council and guidelines for conduct. Number 8, recommend approval of consent judgment for a Starbucks drive-through at West River Shopping Center, Site Plan 60-7, 2022, and Zoning Board of Appeals case number 01-230-5722. Item 9, recommend approval of setting budget study session meetings on May 15th and May 16th, 2024 at 5 p.m. Item 10, recommend approval of an agreement for investment management services for operational funds with Robinson Capital for a fixed amount fee of $50,000. Item 11, recommend approval of the Water System Advisory Council mini-grant agreement. Item 12, recommend approval of the 2024 high-intensity drug trafficking area Oakland County subrecipient agreement. 13, recommend approval and award of a contract for 2024 asphalt replacement program to BSI Paving for an amount not to exceed the approved fiscal year annual budget amount with extensions. Item 14, recommend approval of award of contract for Quaker Valley Subdivision Road Reconstruction Project to Major Contracting Group Incorporated in the amount of $4,216,754.20. Item 15, recommend approval of award of bid for a Tyco 500X street sweeper without brooms assist to Best Equipment Company Incorporated in the amount of $351,245,000. Item 16, recommend approval of award of contract for the 2024 local road asphalt rehabilitation project, Oak Hills Estate and Oakland Subdivision, to Nagel Paving Company in the amount of $1,137,563.76. Item 17, recommend approval award of a proposal for reimbursements of a filter ammonia compressor to Serve Ice Refrigeration in the amount not to exceed $20,000. Item 18, recommend approval and award of lease for mobile robotics field painter to Turf Tank in the amount not to exceed $11,000. Item 19, recommend approval of an agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation for the 2024 Federal Local Safety Program. Item 20, recommend approval of an amendment to the flock safety agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation resolution for the city of Farmington Hills. Item 21, recommend approval of authorization for a grant application to the Michigan Department of Transportation local bridge program for Tuck Road Bridge replacement. Item 22, recommended approval of a request for employment under Section 10.01A of the city charter for a lifeguard. Item 23, recommended approval of a request for employment under Section 10.01A city charter for 2 building assistants. Item 24, recommended approval of a request for employment under Section 10.01 of the city charter for a pro shop golf cart attendant. Item 25, recommended approval of city council study session meeting minutes of March 4th, 2024. And number 26, recommended approval of city council regular session meeting minutes for March 4th, 2024.
Wow. Okay, is there a motion? Yes, Ms. Bolaware.
Yes. I make a recommendation that we approve the consent agenda, items number 6 through 26, as read by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Is there support?
Support.
Support, Ms. Knoll. And this is a roll call vote.
Council members Knoll,
Yes.
Dwyer,
Yes.
Bruce,
Yes.
Bridges,
Yes.
Bolaware,
Yes.
Aldred,
Yes.
and Mayor Rich.
Yes. Okay. Good job, city. Been busy. All right, next item on the agenda is council member comments and announcements. Anyone have something they would like to share? Anyone?
I want to share my comment. I got a comment. I want to, what's basically recognize my son. My son Chauncey Aaron Bridges was received his medical degree from Howard University recently, and I'm very proud of him. And had an opportunity to visit Howard University last week to go to the white coat ceremony. Extremely proud of my son Chauncey Aaron Bridges. Thank you.
And for that, I will not gavel you out of order. Congratulations to
Thank you.
Chauncey.
Thank you.
And it was really special because his brother Chad, who is also a physician, was able to give him his white coat.
That's correct. Thank you.
And we all cried. Okay, fantastic, thank you. I'd like to share that a couple of us, well, as shared earlier, had the opportunity to go to National League of Cities recently and interact with 2,800 council members and mayors from all over the United States, bringing back opportunities for grants and best practices and learning from all over the country. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. Some events that we've recently attended. Over the weekend, I had the opportunity to go to the India League of America event. And for those who may not know, today is Holi, this festival of colors celebrated by the Indian culture. And so had a chance to interact with the Consul General, who is based in Chicago. And we also, a number of us went to an iftar dinner at the Dawoodi Bohra Masjid, and also wanted to share that I will not be at our April 8th meeting, and so it will be very capably chaired by our Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Bridges. And, you know, this is going to be a momentous occasion. First time an African American has presided over a city council meeting. Is this correct?
I believe so.
For a whole council meeting?
Yes.
I know there have been a couple here and there, so I kind of wish I could be there to see this momentous occasion, but if I was, that wouldn't happen.
I do.
So
I do a good job.
I'm sure you'll do great. So please give Mr. Bridges your loving support on the 8th while I'm away at school. Then before the next meeting, which would be the 22nd, we will have finally the first Take a Walk at the Hawk with the Mayor on Tuesday, April 17th. So that would be at noon at the Hawk. If anybody wants to go walk the track with me for an hour, come on by. All right, that then takes us to City Manager update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So it is spring, and that means hopefully the weather's going to get warm now, but it also means that yard waste services resumes the week of April, 1st through the 5th on your regularly scheduled collection day, and will continue through the week of December 9th. City will also offer residents free compost at the William Grace Dog Park starting in May to enrich your garden and landscape projects. A couple of things of note here. Last week, our Central Services team and IT manager, Jack Lee, received an award from the Department of Defense employer support of the Guard and Reserve in recognition of our support of a colleague's National Guard service. That's an individual that works in our IT group that has been called to service. Also, 4 paid-on-call firefighters completed their probationary period and received their badges last Thursday. 3 of our 4 had previously worked for the department and are returning to the team. And along those lines, firefighter Marcy Van Hartsveld, God, I hope I pronounced that correctly, was also recognized at the department's recruiting firefighter of the year, firefighter of the year, and Lieutenant John Schertle was recognized as the department's paid-on-call firefighter of the year. Both of these outstanding firefighters continually demonstrate their readiness and excellence. Last week, hopefully, I saw a lot of familiar faces there. The city welcomed over 1,000 folks, our residents, and outside our city to the Hawk as we hosted the On the Clock tour in partnership with Visit Detroit as a preview to the NFL draft, which occurs next month. So I want to thank numerous city staff who contributed to making this event a huge success, and also to our community members. And lastly, as a late breaker, I just did receive some complaints from residents in the Farmington Green subdivision regarding work being done by Sci-Fi, sounds like along 12-Mile Road, and I'll be passing that information along to our Public Services Department for attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And then that takes us to new business. So we are on to item 2, consideration of approval for the First Amendment to Planned Unit Development 1, 2020, agreement with Farmington Hills Senior Living LLC to permit the removal of a small chapel. Good evening.
Okay. See if we can get the PowerPoint up here.
And please be sure to speak into the microphone.
There we go. Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Eric Prudanik, City Planner, here with you tonight to briefly introduce this agenda item. On December 14th, 2023, following a public hearing, the Planning Commission recommended that City Council approve an amended planned unit development plan for PUD 1 2020, otherwise known as the Rose Senior Living PUD. On January 22nd, 2024, following a public hearing, City Council approved the amended PUD plan. The amended PUD plan approved by council back in January would permit the demolition of the small chapel structure at the southwest corner of Catherine's Place and replace it with a courtyard. And the chapel structure, you can see here in the southeast corner, existing. And then we have our site plan here, which shows it converted to courtyard space. The associated amended PUD agreement is before you this evening for consideration. The subject amendment is necessary in this case to permit the demolition of the chapel because the originally approved PUD called for the structure to remain on site. And that is all I have by way of introduction. I believe the applicants are here tonight. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions by council? No. Nope. Okay. You have a motion, Mr. Bridges?
I do. We had some discussions about this, like a couple months ago, and there was a minor change to this particular PUD. So I'm going to move that council approve the First Amendment to Plan Unit Development 1, 2020 agreement with Farmington Hills Senior Living LLC to permit the removal of a small chapel.
Thank you. Moved by the Mayor Pro Tem. Is there a second, please?
Support.
Support. Thank you. Support, Ms. Knoll and Mr. Aldred. This is a regular vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, passes. Next item, item 3, consideration of approval of the introduction of an ordinance amending the Farmington Hills Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Nuisances, Article 7, Performance Standards, Section 17-101, Noise, for the purpose of adding a new subsection 17-101E2 to prohibit noise that is audible on adjacent residential property emanating from the engine of any parked or standing commercial vehicle or tractor-trailer while loading or unloading, or while waiting to load or unload its cargo if such vehicle is parked or standing for such purposes for a period of more than 20 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. Charmaine Kettler-Schmaltz, Director of Planning and Community Development. We've got the report to you with the two items together. So you've got two separate items, and I don't know if we need two separate motions, but we'll get to that when we get to the items. So before we have two attached draft amendments that deal with the sound for loading and unloading of trucks for the council consideration. These are proposing revisions to chapters 17 and 18 of the code, specifically section 17-101 and section 18-165. So these govern the sound associated with the loading and unloading of trucks respectively. The section 17-101 was amended in 2004 to address maximum permitted noise levels in various districts at specified times of the day. The amendment would add text from section 18-165, which is proposed to be repealed, and would allow the addressing of noise from running of vehicle, trucks, or trailers that are stopped for the loading, unloading, or waiting to do so. The older section, section 18-165, was originally enacted in 1981 and is proposed to be repealed in order to defer noise regulation to the more modern standards of section 17-101. The significant changes to that would be a change to the prohibition of loading and unloading of trucks between the hours of 8 p.m. and 7 a.m. and within 500 feet of a dwelling on Sundays would not carry over with that repeal.
Thank you. Well, let's take it as two separate motions, the first for Chapter 17, and then we'll move into Chapter 18. Any questions before a motion? Any questions before a motion? Okay, well then I'll like a motion for item 3, Chapter 17, please.
Sure.
Yes, Ms. Knoll?
Sure. I'll move that we introduce an ordinance amending the Farmington Hills Code of Ordinances, Chapter 17, Nuisances, Article 7, Performance Standards, Section 17-101, Noise for purpose of adding a new subsection, 17-101E2, to prohibit noise that is audible on adjacent residential property emanating from the engine of a parked or standing commercial truck or tractor trailer while loading or unloading, or while waiting to load or unload its cargo if such vehicle is parked or standing for such purposes for a period of more than 20 minutes.
Support. Thank you. And support, Ms. Boulware? Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and support. Is there any council discussion on this item? Okay, this is a regular vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, carries. And then number 4 would be introduction of an ordinance for Chapter 18 offenses.
Mayor?
Yes, please.
I have a motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
You want to talk on it, Director, Community Development? You all set?
If you have a question, go ahead.
I have no question at all.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Approval, I want to move the approval of introduction of an ordinance amending the Farmington Hills Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Offenses, Article 5, Offenses against Public Peace for purpose of repealing Section 18-165, loading or unloading of trucks.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second? Support by Mr. Aldred, moved by our Mayor Pro Tem. Any additional discussion, please? Okay, on that case, this is also a regular vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And next up, item 5, consideration of approval of the introduction of an ordinance to authorize conveyance of city-owned property. Good evening, Ms. Brockway.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here to present to you today the consideration of an approval of an ordinance authorizing the conveyance of the city-owned property. This is an introduction. This is for a city-owned property which was received from Oakland County due to tax foreclosure in 2009. The parcel in question is a one-family residential, 0.21 acres large. It is landlocked behind Highview Avenue, which is located at the mid-northeastern portion of the city. The applicant and resident that is directly next to it, neighboring the property, has interest in purchasing the property at an amount of $3,000, which has been reviewed by our city assessor. The applicant would be also required to combine this lot to his pre-existing property. There has also been an earnest deposit in place of $200 to purchase the property. We, as the city staff and the city attorney, we have been working to close and have the documents required to close on the sale of this property. However, city charter requires that the city council adopt an ordinance to convey city-owned real estate and property. So we are here, the city attorney and I are here to field any questions you may have in regards to the property in question off of Highview. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Brockway? Okay, in that case, I would appreciate if we could entertain a motion to introduce the ordinance. Dr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mayor. I would move the approval of the introduction of an ordinance to authorize the conveyance of city-owned property parcel 22-23-02-153-009 to Everald Small, CMR 3-24-23.
Support.
Thank you. In that case, any other additional questions or comments? So moved by Dr. Bruce, support by Ms. Bolaware. Okay. This is also a regular vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. And that takes us through to public comment. Okay, so let's talk about public comment because I see we have a number of new people to our council meeting. Welcome to Chambers. Members of the public at a meeting will speak when recognized by the chair. You'll be limited to speaking for a maximum of 5 minutes during any public hearing or public comment. Just want to share one of the things we passed this evening was an update to our council rules. Effective the first meeting in June, that time will be reduced to 3 minutes, which is consistent with what we're seeing with cities all over the area. But understanding that we have a lot of visitors coming these days, we don't want to inhibit comment, and so we are keeping it at 5 minutes for the next couple months. When you do address council, please know that you will speak to council, not to anyone else in the audience. And so when you come to the microphone, you will state your name. If you have a group affiliation, say that, and we'd appreciate if you'd let us know if you are a resident of Farmington Hills. As I said, people must address council by speaking. You'll have 5 minutes, and at the request of residents, we have added a timer that is visible for the speaker as well as everyone on the dais and most of us here in the audience, so that you'll know how much time you have left, and I don't have to tell you you have 2 minutes left or you have 1 minute left. You may certainly address council by speaking. There shall be no playing of audio. There shall be no playing of video. I see that there are some people here with signs this evening. You are, of course, welcome to have your sign. You are not welcome to have it any higher than your shoulders because we don't want to block the view of anyone in the audience. When you're commenting, you may certainly comment upon action, inaction, or performance of the council, the City of Farmington Hills, our commissions, our boards, our employees, our consultants. That's all allowed. Anything that is profane, vulgar, abusive, or personal attacks, including identification of people by name, will not be tolerated. If you have materials you wish to hand out to members of council, please inform or signal to the clerk, Ms. Lindahl, who's at the end of the dais. She will receive them from you and she will distribute to council. We will not have any members of the public disturbing people who speak at the podium. We want people giving public comment to be able to give their comment unintruded upon, and so we ask that there is no interruption. We also ask that there is no comment by people in the audience by way of speaking, clapping, showing approval or disapproval of any remarks of a speaker or member. That is not allowed. I will advise that you're out of order. If I have to advise a person twice, they will be asked to leave. Those are the rules for public comment. For those who wish to give public comment, we ask that you line up starting with where the table is. And so form one single file line, and then each person will come up in turn. Is there, after all of that, is there anyone here this evening who would like to provide public comment? Please go to line up behind the podium. Okay, thank you. And you may want to judge, how long you'll be standing based on how many people are in line. So not everybody has to be in line all at once. It could be hard for some people to stand. Good evening and welcome.
Hello, hi, and good evening. Thank you for having me, Councilman. My name is Brian Ellis. I'm a resident of Farmington Hills, live off of Haggerty between 13 and 14 Mile. I first want to thank a lot of folks here who previously felt and fielded some of my emails, as well as previously speaking to previous council. I really appreciate some of the discussions I'm having here today, specifically around the dangerous dogs ordinance. Today, my goal overall is just to work on having this as new business for future considerations. I've continued safety and concerns about my family. I'm happily married with a 6, 4, and 2-year-old who live next to multiple dangerous dogs, and ultimately I'm looking to continue to work with council members on ways to provide safety for my family. This just being one of those instances and one of these avenues I'd like to explore. So ultimately, my goal today is make sure I could ultimately get this on the official agenda. I submitted this in writing through the clerk's office, and look forward to discussing and working together on improving this. Ultimately, I would like to call out a few areas I would like to work on together that I just saw inconsistent through my own eyes as a father. And starting here in Part 2, Code of Ordinances, in Chapter 6, Animals. Specifically Article 3, dangerous animals. First and foremost, 6.51, I do think we all are in line together as we are looking to protect the health and safety of the public against dangerous and potentially dangerous animals. And I just want to thank everyone for being in line, and I am in line with you on this ordinance. And it seems like it's the first one by intent, and I thank us all on that, and that being that we are protecting and with the safety of others in mind.
I'm sorry, sir, as you turn your page, if I may. Gentlemen in the back who are speaking with one another, we can hear you at the podium. If you would like to have a conversation, please go to the hall.
Thank you.
I beg your pardon, sir.
So, Section 631, some definitions I would like to talk about as well, specifically the suitable leash. That being that a dog is attached to a leash that's no more than 15 feet in length, and such material on a leash is capable of restraining and does restrain the type of size of dog which is attached. And that, too, that the leash is continually held by a person who is reasonable and able and does restrain and prohibit the dog from being out of that person's physical control. It's mentioned 15 feet here, which we could talk about momentarily, but I'd like to really focus on 631 and what a suitable leash is, how do we implement, and how do we enforce that. Same thing, reasonable control as it relates to a dog, meaning keeping a dog on a suitable leash. How do we enforce that, and how do we implement this? I've dealt with this dog who's had bad days, according to the owner. It's from out of state and had issues with previous owners, as explained to me. So Section 6-33, licensing and vaccinations, I'd like to work together on, specifically Section A. And this is required within 6 months of a dog coming from out of state or out of the county to ensure that it has the vaccination it's needed. How is this implemented and how is this enforced? There's an area of an opportunity that we could work together here, specifically as we call to attention and B, some of the ordinances around cats. I think there's some similarities that we can align with dogs and cats. Section 6-52, Animal Review Board, and I respect many professional opinions here that are on that board. I do want to focus in on that is not required in the dangerous animal section to have discretion of a professional, be that a licensed veterinarian, Animal Kennel Club AKC certified animal behaviorist and/or an AKC certified animal trainer appointed by City Council. I think this is a very reasonable request to have these professionals involved during the Dangerous Ordinance Act, and I'd like to work on 652 together. A suitable leash here again. Here it's called out in section 1 as 10 feet. We talk about that 15 feet in the other section, so some inconsistency in how this is written. I'd like to stick to 10 feet. Let's see if we could align that together. Same thing with proper enclosure. Looking to see how do we implement, how do we enforce this? It's very clear that Chief King and others might need some extra oomph to actually enforce some of these pieces, which is, as we look at the ordinances, is not explained. So physical enclosure is constructed at all times and maintained in a manner that is effective to prevent the animal from escaping the confines of the enclosure. What happens when that doesn't exist? What happens when I'm in my front yard with my kids and these dogs are roaming out loose? These are the issues when they come out with teeth, come at me, have bad days, and my children will not be a victim. How do we implement and how do we enforce? I'd like to thank everyone for working together. I'd like to call out my father-in-law who's showing me support here. Dr. Randy Bruce, I want to call attention to thank you for giving the attention and time here. He took some extra steps to talk with me on this. Chief King, I want to call public awareness for thank you for helping to keep us safe. And thank you all council members. I look forward to working with you on the Dangerous Ordinance Act.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, welcome. Please be sure to speak in the microphone, state your name and where you and what city you live in, please.
My name is Renee Lichtman. I'm a child Holocaust survivor, and I'd like to say a few words about the situation in Gaza and ask for your support and a resolution for a ceasefire and the stopping of killing of children. And my experience as a hidden child, of course, many Jewish children were killed in those days. And I'm sad to say that every day I listen to the news, and of course I get the flashbacks about my own experience. For the last 20 years, I've been a speaker on the Holocaust, on my experiences right up the street here at the Holocaust Museum. And I talk to young people that come in buses. I talk to adults as well about the lessons of the Holocaust, which are supposed to be about tolerance and peace and understanding and love. And of course, if we pay attention to the news each day, that's not what's going on in the Middle East, in Gaza. And I think you have an opportunity to say a few words. I speak to you also as a father and as a grandfather. And I don't want we hear these words, these numbers like 7,000 children that are murdered. Well, each one is a child. And I'd like you to consider that, please, when you come up with the language of this resolution that we ask you to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council City members. My name is Suhair Ghanem. I live in Huntington Woods. And
Why the lights went out, but
Somebody's leaning against it.
yes.
Okay.
Apology. For those watching at home, someone leaned against the light switch. Sorry, ma'am.
that sends a message that you need to listen very carefully here, right? So I live in Huntington Woods. I have neighbors that I love, but, of Jewish faith. I have members of my family and friends who live in Farmington Hills. So my name is Suhair Ghanem again. Since the last meeting, the conditions on the ground in Gaza has gotten much worse. Israel continues to use starvation as a weapon of war. Since the last meeting, an additional 1,188 people, Palestinian people, were killed. Over 700 of them are children and women. Also, an additional 1,891 Palestinians were injured, and over 27 children have died the horrific death of starvation. Palestinians have the right to live with dignity. It is not okay to destroy their civil society. It is not okay to destroy all their universities, hospitals. It is not okay to target and kill over 95 of their top prominent thinkers, authors, poets, and professors. It is not okay to target and kill over 130 of their journalists. It is not okay to destroy the roads, mosques, churches, the sewage system, the water pipes, the water purification system, and electricity generators. Palestinians have the right to live with dignity like all of us, all the people in the world have the right. We are here, we take for granted that we, at the end of this day, at the end of this night, we can go to our homes and sleep in our warm beds and eat any time of the day. You open your fridge and you get your food, you drive your cars, and we forget that there are people who are still in Gaza suffering every day because of lack of food. So think for the moment, if you were born in Palestine and you were not born as a Jew, and you were deprived of basic rights, rights to your home, to your land, to your food, to you, to your kids, to the family, and you lived under siege in Gaza for 17 years, what would you have wished for us to do for you as you are starving? What would you have wished for the world to do? I understand we are here and we are not equipped to have the world resolve all the problems here at this moment. I'm here humbly, kindly, and simply asking for the minimum, which is to add the next meeting agenda, the ceasefire resolution, a resolution that calls for a permanent ceasefire, releasing all hostages on both sides, and have an unhindered humanitarian aid to reach all people in Gaza. Please consider this thought. The most horrific part of watching a group committing crimes is that good people, decent people, continue to watch and do nothing. It is not only the responsibility of Congress to stand against genocide, it is the responsibility of everyone here not to be complicit and stand clearly against genocide. Thank you for your consideration. I appreciate your listening very much indeed.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Rich and council members. I'm Pastor Dale Milford. I'm Associate Minister at Narden Park Church, just down the road. And I'm also a faith in justice organizer for Michigan United. And I'm a 28-year property tax paying resident of Farmington Hills. I'm here to speak in favor of a written, published ceasefire resolution from this city council. I witnessed earlier this evening all of you turning to that flag, and let me recite the words that I heard all of you say. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now that phrase, under God, was inserted in the middle of the Cold War in 1954. It was intended to set the United States apart from our adversaries, especially those on the other side of what was called then the Iron Curtain. I'd like to read you now verbatim what President Eisenhower said on Flag Day 1954 when he signed that change under law, saying, under God. From this day forward, the millions of our school children will daily proclaim in every city and town, every village and rural schooled house, the dedication of our nation and our people to the Almighty. In this way, we are reaffirming the transcendence of religious faith in America's heritage and future. In this way, we shall constantly strengthen these spiritual weapons, which forever will be our country's most powerful resource in peace or in war. So I am here today as a person of faith to proclaim that we all promise to adhere to that pledge. We're not espousing Christian nationalism, no, but rather it's our promise to live up to the principles of a loving God. So I'm not here to talk numbers to you. There's a million numbers with regard to this issue. I'm here to talk about principles. Yes, especially on this issue where three major religions are represented: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Now, we are all taught, all of those faiths are taught, that we are all descended from one spiritual bloodline. And since we are all descended from Abraham, doesn't that make us all cousins? Now, don't get me wrong, I have 24 first cousins on my mother's side alone, and some of them are truckers. So believe me, I don't agree with all of them. But nevertheless, I got to tell you, I love each and every one of them. And if we look carefully enough between us, we will certainly always find common ground. And that common ground in all of our faiths is to love our neighbors, all our neighbors on this side of the ocean or the other. And that principle, that pledge that all of us took, transcends any question of jurisdiction. Whether you represent a school board, a township, a city, a county, a state, or the federal government, it's in all of our jurisdictions to live up to that pledge. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That is all humankind. So I was glad to hear you mention bringing up this issue in DC, but I would say in response that backroom discussions, in-camera sessions, are no replacement for a public resolution and publishing of that resolution, a proclamation, if you will. And it's not like it's unprecedented. I mean, really, over 70 cities in America have already signed that kind of resolution, including more locally, Ann Arbor, Hamtramck, Dearborn Heights, Detroit. They have all clearly stood up for and signed a pledge for peace, lived up to their pledge for liberty and justice for all. And it's not that hard to find common ground. I left with the clerk a copy of the resolution signed a few months ago by the city of Detroit. Any word processor could quickly exchange Detroit for Farmington Hills. It's so easy. We ask you to do it today. We, voters of Farmington Hills, voters of Islamic, Judaic, and Christian faiths, we are all watching. Whether we're approaching the end of Ramadan, whether we're beginning the week of the Holy Week, or whether we're looking forward to the Passover in next month, we are all on one page on this. Amen? Amen.
Thank you. Nope, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am. We don't do that. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jake Ehrlich. I'm a leader with Congregation Techia, which is a Reconstructionist Jewish community based in Ferndale. And we have a number of members who are residents of Farmington Hills. So I'm here on their behalf. I'm also here on the behalf of Rabbi Alana Alpert, who is not around tonight, but is one of over 300 rabbis, cantors, and rabbinical and cantorial students who have signed a pledge affirming the need for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. I join that chorus. I join them, and I urge you to add this to not only to the agenda, to draft it, but to publish it, just as the pastor before me spoke. This is not an issue where we need to be divided by our identity, by our religion. This is not an issue where you can say that the Jewish community stands for whatever Israel is doing. It's not the case. It's not radical to demand peace. Please join the chorus, the movement, the global movement of pursuing peace. I understand that you are making efforts behind the scenes. That's well and good, and I urge you to continue that. But do it publicly. These are our instruments of democracy. These are the sites that we have to raise our collective voices of conscience. And we demand to be heard. Why will Farmington Hills not wish to be on the right side of history? For this is the question that we must ask. The great prophetic teacher who walked alongside Reverend Martin Luther King, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, said, "In a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible." You all are in a position where you can elevate our collective voice and enshrine it in a public proclamation for ceasefire. Yes, it may not end the war tomorrow, but what other choice do we have? I call on all of you to use your positions, use your privilege, use your influence to join this global movement for peace, putting Farmington Hills on the right side of history. Mayor Rich, you mentioned that when Pro Tem Bridges will oversee the next meeting, that will be the first time that an African American Pro Tem, I believe, will be in such a position. In 2024, I think that's actually nothing to celebrate. I think that's a problem to say that it's taken this long to see inclusion, to see a community that's rooted in democracy and progressive values. I think that that's a negative point on the balance sheet of Farmington Hills, that it has taken this long. And I think that history will not look kindly upon all of us who wish to shrug off this genocide as it occurs. It's not just politics. It's humanity. And I know that some of you come from spiritual traditions of your own, and those who may be atheists, I'm sure, have a reverence for the human life and human flourishing. And I ask you to dig deep into yourself and consider, how am I living up to the responsibility of this moment? The Jewish people just celebrated the holiday of Purim just yesterday, which is the story of Esther from the Bible. When Esther approaches the king and she says, "If I beg for my people's salvation and I am not invited, he may do away with me entirely." And her cousin Mordecai advises her, "Who knows? Perhaps you have attained your position for just such a time as this." And that's what I say to you all. Perhaps you have come to this position for just such a time as this. Please work for ceasefire, work for peace. Do what you can.
Thank you. No, we do not clap. We do not respond during public comment. If I need to ask you about this again, you will need to leave. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Rich and City Council members. I'm Kelly Carpenter Crawford, a 29-year resident of Farmington Hills. I haven't been in the chamber since we inaugurated you in January. That was a lovely event to be at, and I appreciate your opening comments this evening and the conversations that I know you're having. But I am here this evening. I've been watching the past meetings, the recorded meetings, and have heard so many pleas for you to please consider a proclamation, a resolution in support of ceasefire, and I'm here to stand with those who have made that ask. And I've heard you say that you've drawn a line, that this is not your work, but please don't remain immovable on that subject. Please continue to hear people's voices and think about how you might act. And I want you to know that I stand with all those who are making the same ask. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Also, for the people with signs, signs will be no higher than your shoulders. It's a little higher than your shoulder. Thank you. Good evening.
Mayor Rich, council members, it's great to be here. My name's Tommy Airy. I live in Detroit. I am here as a Christian. I've been a Christian for 40 years. I'm not here to push my Christianity on you, but I'm here to speak to those of you that are rooted in the Christian tradition. Really, I come to you during Christian Holy Week in a posture of repentance. Because I grew up in the Southern California suburbs. I went to Saddleback Church, one of the largest mega churches in North America. I attended a private Christian school where my fourth grade teacher, after we read the Bible every morning, said, "God said it, I believe it, and that settles it." And at the school and in these churches that I grew up in, they taught me to be a Zionist. They taught me to support Israel no matter what, unconditionally, uncritically. And it was about 20 years ago that I attended Fuller Theological Seminary, and I started to read the Bible in its original languages. I started studying theology, biblical studies. And it was then that I realized that my teachers and my pastors were counterfeiting the sacred text. And it was soul searching for me. And the more that I studied, the more I realized I was on the wrong side of history. And the more that I paid attention and the more that I followed the news, the more that I met people from Palestine, the more I heard their stories, the more I realized that I was complicit in this kind of oppression and violence and murder. And of course, since October 7th, I've been absolutely horrified every single day to pay attention to what is happening. That the country that I grew up in and most of the Christians in this country support unconditionally the carpet bombing of tens and thousands of innocent civilians in Palestine. And none of this has anything to do with the agape love of Jesus. Nothing to do with it. And so I come to you and I urge you as a council to be steadfast in this and to publish an immediate, permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Because it's the right thing to do, because it's rooted in love and justice. And again, I understand. I grew up in the suburbs of Southern California. I understand that is probably an unpopular move amongst the social network that you swim in. And so I'm asking you to do the right thing, even if you sacrifice some social respectability, even if it means that family members and friends might turn their back on you. Because again, as a Christian, right here in the midst of Holy Week, when we are slowly approaching Good Friday, when the empire crucified a dark-skinned Palestinian Jewish rabbi because he wasn't afraid to tell the truth, no matter what it cost. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Madam, this is the second warning now about the sign needs to be your shoulder, no higher than your shoulders. If I need to call this out one more time, I will ask you to leave the chambers. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Finkel. I'm with Jewish Voice for Peace Detroit. Today, as you probably have heard, for the first time, the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution for an immediate ceasefire. And for the first time, it passed for the first time because the United States did not veto it. The United States abstained on the resolution, and I'll get back to what that means. We should make no mistake that the reason this happened has a great deal to do with the pressure from the grassroots population in the United States, which has been putting enormous pressure on the Biden administration. That includes your own, I'm sure, your own representations that Mayor Rich mentioned to members of government, representing the sentiments that have been expressed in Farmington Hills and so many other communities. But it's just the beginning. Israel has a long history of ignoring, defying United Nations Security Council resolutions, going back actually to Resolution 194 from 1949, but all the resolutions from 1967 about the occupation and so forth. It is essential that the pressure continue to be mounted and escalated because there isn't time. The passage of the UN Security Council resolution by itself is not going to bring food to a single starving family in Gaza, and there are now hundreds of thousands of starving families in Gaza. Israel has openly blocked the delivery of aid from the United Nations Relief and Works Organizations, UNRWA, where the United States has shamefully cut off the funding. You can listen to people who are experts in questions of food security and hunger and famine, who have seen it all over the world, in Ethiopia and Sudan and so on. They are saying that they have never seen famine come about as quickly and as thoroughly as it is in Gaza. And it is not because of shortage of food. It is because the humanitarian aid is being blocked. And there's this absurd charade of dropping it from the air and so on, which does absolutely no good. So it is essential that the pressure be escalated for a ceasefire that will be enforced, and that will enable the humanitarian aid to get in to avoid starvation. Because if hundreds of thousands of people, the majority women and children, starve, then there's nothing really left to talk about, is there? And I'm afraid that that is the direction in which the government of Israel wants to go. And that's where our voices come in. It's not just ceasefire resolutions from so many cities, although it includes that. It includes the uncommitted vote organized by Listen to Michigan, which is spreading to other states. It all makes a difference, and it must happen now. And it's not only about Palestine and Israel, where the resolution, of course, like the other resolutions that the United States vetoed, does call for the release of hostages. But it's not only about Israel and Palestine, and it's not only about the broader Middle East.
Please, could you please move the microphone down so we can
Thank
hear
you for letting me speak here. My name is Srila Datta. I've lived in Farmington Hills for almost 28 years now. And thank you so much for, as you said, you brought these concerns of people like me who are asking for a ceasefire resolution to Washington, and that's great. But I would also ask you to consider your decision not to pass a resolution here. Frankly, as a resident of the city, I'm embarrassed because communities all around us, Ferndale, Canton, Dearborn, Ann Arbor, and many others have made this simple gesture of proclaiming solidarity with the suffering people. And so it's not even a fact that this council does not comment on foreign policy, because recently you did pass a resolution expressing support for Ukraine. What's different now? If anything, the situation in Gaza is far more horrific than anything seen in Ukraine. In the words of a UN spokesperson, the depth of the horror surpasses our ability to describe it. A Canadian doctor described it as man-made hell on earth. Dear Mayor and councillors, I voted for many of you and even campaigned for some of you so that you could provide genuine representation for people in our city. Cheerful pictures of councillors out in the community used to make me smile, but now it just makes me sad. It makes me feel like we've just been going on with our lives as usual and just not caring. I hope that's not who we are. I'm just deeply disappointed by your decision not to put the issue of the ceasefire resolution on the agenda. I hope you'll change your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're getting some noise from out in the hall. So if we could please close the council chamber doors. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Lindsay Airy, and I'm a Detroit resident. And first and foremost, I'm a human whose heart has broken more than I thought possible in the last 171 days, watching a live stream genocide come daily through our screens and watch our politicians do nothing besides lie and ignore our requests and our demands. 60% of Americans demand a ceasefire in Gaza, and it's being ignored. And they're playing political games. But I've been given hope by the city councils across our nation who've been willing to take a stand, and that's why I'm here tonight. But I'm also here as a Christian. I'm a member of Christians for a Free Palestine who denounce the racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and white supremacy perpetuated by the Christian Zionist movement in our nation, which is terrifying. It is terrifying, and it is largely responsible for influencing politicians and policy that is killing tens of thousands in a genocide in Gaza. And so as we Christians move through Holy Week this week, I'm mindful of the fact that the leader of our faith was a Palestinian Jewish rabbi named Jesus. This Palestinian Jew dared to challenge the brutal Roman occupation of his day. It's this Jesus who we Christians claim to follow, but the last 2,000 plus years of imperial Christian violence have kept receipts to the contrary. Not only would Jesus be rolling in his grave, seeing how his kin are being slaughtered in Gaza, he is also rising up in the resistance of all those subject to imperial violence around the globe. Much like Palestinians of all faiths, shapes, and sizes here in Farmington Hills, across the US, in Israel, occupied Palestine, the West Bank, and Gaza, and around the globe, Jesus and the resistance he was a part of was also maligned, lied on, persecuted by the occupation of his day. But his freedom movement kept growing, just like this one. So finally, the occupation forces tortured and brutally executed him. Much like we see US funding and political cover being used by Israeli occupation forces today, not only to commit countless of the most heinous and brutal crimes against humanity any of us have ever witnessed, live streamed through our phones daily, 24/7, for the last 171 excruciating days. But for just shy of 6 months now, we, the American public, have also been witness to the pathological lengths our Western media and elite political class running our country will go to evade and cover for this brutal genocidal campaign, spinning their endless lies and unjustified, unfounded justifications while completely ignoring the will of the people, not to mention the international community and the International Court of Justice, which has made it abundantly clear that we are legally responsible to do all we can to put an end to this genocide. And so here I am, a citizen. a descendant of Christian lineage standing in front of you who have power. Maybe it's a little bit of power, but it matters. It really matters. The blood of billions upon billions of Jewish, Muslim, Arab, Palestinian, and Native communities of all races and ethnicities around the globe, dripping from the hands of 2,000 plus years of imperial Christian violence, depravity, pillaging, and slaughter. And I find myself not only completely wrecked by the immense and unaccountable horror of the nightmare we see being perpetuated on our Palestinian siblings, but I also find myself and my Christian kin across this nation increasingly mobilized to action by the sacred, powerful, tired, but also tireless faces, many of whom you see in this chamber today, by a whole movement rising up across this country and the globe. And indeed, we are millions and we are billions, and we will not stop fighting until all our Palestinian siblings are free. So we call on you, council members, please, we beg of you, stand for your own souls as well. Stand on the right side of history. It matters. Call for a ceasefire resolution, draft one, publish one. That is what is in your power to do. That is how you can do right by your Arab, Muslim, Palestinian, and quite frankly, all of us community, because if what's being done in Gaza is allowed to pass, none of us are safe, and none of us will be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you're in line to speak, that's great. Otherwise, please be seated. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Zoe. I'm a resident of Metro Detroit, and I'm also a member of Congregation Tehillah. So I'm speaking to you tonight, as someone living in the area, as a Jew of conscience, and as a human being. I want to take issue with the idea that this shouldn't be considered by the Farmington Hills City Council because it's not a local issue. I think it absolutely is a local issue. It is one of the most it is one of the most urgent issues of my entire lifetime, and it's upon all of us everywhere we are in the world. But beyond it being a moral issue that everyone should feel called to respond to, it is a local issue in the sense that it is affecting your Arab residents, your Jewish residents, anyone of Palestinian descent or Israeli descent. There's many people here who are deeply affected by what's happening in very different ways. But the longer that this gets dragged out, the worse it is for everybody. And I really believe that. For a long time, I struggled with the idea of whether, we should just let Israel defend itself, right? And that was something that I needed to unlearn, because the more that I learned about the history, the more I realized that what's happening isn't defense. What's happening is displacement, land grabs, colonialism, and none of that makes anyone any safer. What it does is make a lot of people very rightfully angry, and at the state of Israel, and by extension at its populace, and by extension, because Israel claims to be speaking in the name of all Jews, it does increase anti-Semitism as well. So while we are not the primary victims, not by a long shot, Jews are also very negatively affected by this. And so it should be very clear that there is no Jewish consensus on this. I think you've seen, Jewish person after Jewish person up here telling you, we don't want this. We don't want this to be happening, not in our name. And so I want to just really reiterate that there is no Jewish consensus on this issue, and there are many, many of us who are opposed to it because we can see that we're all connected, right? We can see that all of our human fates are connected. And, you know, an injury to one is an injury to all. All of that is true. There isn't going to be peace until there's some kind of justice and some kind of repair. But that can't happen while there are bombs raining down on Gaza, right? And it's not going to happen. Power doesn't give itself up willingly. So it's not going to happen unless the international community actually pressures the state. And the international community is not going to do that unless we pressure them. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to keep showing up until something changes, because we're sick of seeing it. We're sick of seeing, you know, mothers hold their dead babies. We're sick of seeing people starving and baking bread from pet food. It's not something that any of us should be able to just sit by and watch. I really long for a future where everybody is safe and everyone is at peace, but that is not going to happen until a ceasefire is put into place and actual talks start to happen that address the very legitimate political grievances of the Palestinian people. If we can't get there, we're not going to get anywhere, and people are just going to keep dying, and I don't think any of us want that, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Amanda Kostron. I was actually born in Farmington Hills, and I'm proud of my Jewish background as well as a proud anti-Zionist. My family was raised to believe that the state of Israel is some kind of safe haven for Jewish people. But even just briefly reviewing the history, it's clear that Israel is a colonial project built on ethnic cleansing and the genocide of Palestinians. An apartheid state doesn't keep Jews safe, and we cannot allow Israel to continue their war crimes with impunity with our state's tax dollars. Zionism breaks every single Jewish value, and for 75 years, it has been used to justify the massacres of Palestinians by the Israeli military, the destruction of ancient villages and olive groves, and a military occupation that separates families from each other with checkpoints and walls. We know our safety is and always has been in solidarity with each other and our shared future. Despite hardship, the diaspora Jews creating thriving communities and cultural practices and histories, as long as Zionism has existed, there were Jews standing in opposition to it. In 2019, Sadak, Chicago, became the first anti-Zionist synagogue in the US. And not only did they oppose Zionism because of its self-stated goal to dispossess Arabic Palestinians, they saw Zionism as a false promise. They rejected the idea that Jewish freedom from anti-Semitism must be accomplished by a militarized ethno-state. I could tell you about the 17,000 children who have become orphaned in the past 5 months, and I could tell you all of Israel's horrible war crimes I have seen in just my lifetime. But this is all preventable. There is one clear remedy to Israel's morbid disregard towards Palestinian life and human suffering, and our government who bankrolls it. Call for an immediate permanent ceasefire and stop sending military aid to a foreign nation. In fact, Farmington Hills sends $1,300,000 through our state taxes to Israel. And it's time to take an unwavering stand in defense of human lives. I hope you can stand in solidarity with the Jewish people who oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope, put your sign down. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sharice Fulton. I've lived in Farmington since 1970 and in my current subdivision since 1993. I feel like I'm kind of a fish out of water here because I'm not here to talk about ceasefire. I'm here to talk about the ordinance in Farmington Hills. I don't understand how ordinances operate because for 25 plus years I've had a shed in my yard. And now I find that I am against the ordinances. And I have a violation, as does more than half of the people in the subdivision. Supposedly, somebody called to complain about sheds, so the ordinance officer has now decided to come around house to house and issue violations, which is fine if you had done that when we put them in. And I had asked her when I moved in and was on the board, are you going to enforce any ordinances about sheds? And she said, normally we don't do that after they're installed. Well, now all of a sudden, she's enforcing them. And all of us find that we have to take them down or get rid of them. And for me, I found out that because I'm on a corner lot, I have what's called a second front yard. I've never heard that term ever. So I have to move my shed all the way around to the back practically on the commons, 6 feet from the commons, because I don't have another side yard. And my backyard is got patio, and I can't put a shed on that. So I'm a little upset that she's choosing to enforce the rules. Now, I know ignorance is not bliss, and she should have been enforcing them, and we should have known the rules. But why now? Because somebody complained? Is every subdivision going to be under the same rules that our subdivision is, or do they have to wait till somebody complains? Because on the way here, I passed 3 subs where I could find numerous people with sheds in the wrong spot. So is it now just a pick and choose? But I don't agree with that. I don't mind playing by the rules, and I will remove my shed because that's what I do, follow the rules. But I don't think that it's fair to ask somebody to do it 25 plus years later. Why is it such a problem now? It hasn't been a problem in 25 years. The reason she said the shed couldn't be there is because of fire and water. I don't understand what fire and water has to do with my shed. If I'm going to have a fire, it's going to be from the gas can in my garage, not my cushions in my storage shed or my vases for my backyard. I don't know if I have a flood. That's my problem. It's nobody else's problem. So now I'm going to be forced to take the shed down, which is not going to withhold moving, and move it someplace else. I don't mind it, taking it down and getting rid of it, but I just feel like she could have done this as we went along and not waited until somebody so-called complained. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Sure. I'm Gary Mection, I'm the city manager. I'm sorry you're having issues. The young lady standing behind you, Karen Mondora, is my assistant city manager. She would be very happy to take your information so that we can follow up with you tomorrow, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine.
And she'll meet you out in the hallway.
All right, thank
Okay?
you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And your patience, appreciate it.
And I am calling a brief recess. I'm calling a brief recess. Y'all want to move down? You can stay. Please sit down. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having me here and for taking the time to listen to us right now. My name is Heather Burnham. I am a preschool teacher. I've been a preschool teacher for like over 13 years. I'm from Waterford, but Farmington Hills is very important to me, considering the Holocaust Museum and all of the information that I've been able to get about my family from them. My grandfather was a Holocaust survivor, and up until the day he died in 2019, the trauma had stayed with him, and you couldn't mention the Holocaust. I didn't even know that he was a survivor until, nearly until the day he passed, because it was so hard for him to talk about, and it was so, if it came up, it would cause him to not eat for days, and it was just such a traumatic experience. And as a survivor of childhood sexual assault myself, I understand the impacts of trauma, and I can see the impacts of trauma that are happening all the way in Palestine and that are happening here with the endless and constant grief and pain and suffering that we're seeing being broadcast to us over social media. I have friends that I'm talking to in Palestine, and I've known for years now that I worry I will never hear from again every time I check online. And if days go by that I haven't heard from them, I assume that they're gone. And as a teacher, it's incredibly hard to look at the skeletal bodies of children laying there only able to blink and shallowly breathe. I know that if I told my preschool class they had to wait for snack time and they couldn't get their graham cracker for like 15 minutes, they would lose their minds. It wouldn't go well. And to think that children are going days without meals and drinking dirty puddle water, if they're getting that at all. And I'm here speaking today because I believe in our community, and I believe in all of you as people. Hearing you talk about your families gave me so much hope because I know that you care. And sometimes when we care, we have to make very hard choices. And sometimes when we make those hard choices, we have to be firm with them and we have to stand for them. And that's why I'm here. I'm a very timid person, but I know that I have to speak for what's right. And I'm urging you to please pass a ceasefire resolution and to please carry our voices higher than we can get them. Because every hour, people are dying and starving. We can't go back in time and save the dead, but there's still time and hope for all the people in Rafah and Gaza and in Palestine. There's still time to get them food, to get them aid, and to get them their homes back. They've lost so much, and I can't even imagine the impact of the trauma they will have to live with for the rest of their lives after this, if they even survive. The thought of parents picking up the body parts of their kids breaks my heart. I know parents should only ever have to pick up their kids' toys, not their body parts. And a child shouldn't have to sit in a hospital crying by themselves without a parent to hold their hand because all of their relatives are gone. They shouldn't have to sit there getting their limbs amputated with no one to hold them close and tell them that they're going to be okay and that they're being loved, because nobody can say for sure that they will be okay. But I'm here because they are loved. Everyone there is. And we need to stand for them. And we need to support them. And we need to show that we care about the people here and that we stand against the Islamophobia and the anti-Semitism and the violence that we've been seeing across the country. We need to make a stand against the white supremacy and the injustice. And we need to just make a stand for people. And I want to thank you again for taking the time to listen to me and hear me. I really, truly am grateful, and it's very important that you know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, friends. I feel like we're friends now. My name is Dolly Klein, and I've been here 5 times to speak in favor of a permanent ceasefire in Farmington Hills.
Looks like your friend is helping lower the microphone for you. There you go.
Yeah, I'm also not that tall as the person speaking in front of me. I live in Farmington, and I have 3 kids. And there's a lot of things I would do on a Monday night other than come here to public speak, because I really don't like public speaking. But then I think about the moms in Gaza who don't have an opportunity to speak for themselves, and I feel like I have to come and speak on their behalf to ask for a permanent ceasefire resolution, because it's a humanitarian crisis that's going on, and they can't speak for themselves. I like to think that if there was a situation in Farmington Hills and Farmington, that the people in Gaza would think, to go to their city council and say something nice and ask them for a ceasefire resolution there as well. So I'm just trying to put good karma into the world, and as a mom, as a Jewish mom, as a resident of Farmington, I just would like a ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kim Redican, and I'm the State Council of Pax Christi, Michigan, which is a Catholic peace and justice organization. I'm a campus minister, I'm a theology teacher, and I'm a mother. But most importantly, I'm not a resident of Farmington Hills, but I am a resident of the world. And so is everyone in this room. And I work with a group called Meta Peace Team, and I've done human rights work in Palestine. And I could stand up here and talk for hours about the injustices of occupation. For a long time, I could tell you about home demolitions, about administrative detention of children without due process, about olive trees being cut down, and on and on and on. But tonight I come to say, I'm urging you, please, pass this resolution. I think in all of our faith traditions, or just in good humanistic tradition, we do what we can. And this is not that difficult to pass a resolution. In my high school, my students come up to me every day and they're like, Miss, what are we doing for Gaza? Nothing, nobody, it's silent. And I had to look at my students. We've gone to our senators, we continue to. We've gone to our Congress people. They don't respond to us. But this is a way that who among us, if one of our own children or any child had a car coming at them, wouldn't jump in the street to pull that child out of the street, right? Who among us wouldn't do whatever it took to save the single life of a child? And collectively, it was said earlier, these resolutions passed by City Council have moved us in a trajectory toward, I hope, ultimately, some sort of justice. This just can't continue. I want to say this too. The first time I came back from Palestine, I was a wreck because I called it the unbearable burden of knowing. Because once you see, you can't unsee. And we're saying this minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, month after month. None of us can say that we have not seen. So I'm going to plead, all of us, look at our children tonight. Look at them deeply. Look at our grandchildren and say, what length would you go to preserve the life of one of your own grandchild or your own child or anyone else's? This is something we can do. And I would end by saying this, the money that we are sending for military hardware, for bombs, could be spent for human needs. This is a sin, it's an atrocity. I speak as a Christian also. During Holy Week, I am deeply repentant of the 2,000 years in my tradition of anti-Semitism, of anti-Muslim sentiment that has played a big part in the injustices in Palestine. So thank you tonight for listening to all of us. I'm not a person who's very eloquent, but all I know is this must stop. This has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Dana. I came here to speak a few meetings ago, and I spoke about how I feel as a Palestinian Muslim living in the environment that we live in today, with everything happening back home in Palestine. And I'm back
Do you
today.
live, Donna?
Sorry?
Where do you live?
In Farmington Hills.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I came to speak about, well, I spoke about how I felt, and I'm back today, but this time I'm not going to speak about how I feel because you know how I feel, and you know how many of these people sitting in this room feel. But I'm just surprised because why has it taken you so long to do anything? Why have you not taken action yet? And frankly, I think it's quite embarrassing on your end because you have people here that come to every single one of your meetings pleading and practically begging you to do something about the situation that's happening to our people in Palestine, and nothing has been done. Multiple other cities in Michigan were able to call for a ceasefire. The city of Detroit, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Dearborn, Dearborn Heights, Hamtramck, Ypsilanti, Traverse City, Canton, Ferndale, Flint, Kalamazoo, Northville, and Warren all passed a resolution for a ceasefire in Gaza. So why is it that the city of Farmington Hills still hasn't been able to if all those other cities have? You see, I could stand here and talk about the statistics of people being killed, bombed, burnt, and starved to death in Palestine, but I'm not going to because you already know the statistics. You see it and hear about it every day on social media, and you also hear about it at every single one of your meetings by your own community. So why have you called for a ceasefire? You might think that you don't have power to do anything. I mean, we all know that you calling for a ceasefire will not single-handedly end the genocide happening, but you don't understand how much power you have to be able to put pressure on the state of Michigan as well as the US government. You calling for a ceasefire is calling for peace, to stop sending arms and billions of dollars to Israel, and also a way of showing humanity and solidarity to the people of your own community. After all these meetings and all these speeches, as a community member, you'd expect your city council to listen and do something. Yes, you're hearing us, but you're not listening to us because if you were, you would have already passed a ceasefire resolution. And you wouldn't have all these people, a part of the community that you're in charge of, sitting here asking you for the same thing over and over and over again. We are also blessed to have our own homes and to be able to eat meals every day with our families. And I thank God for it every day, alhamdulillah. But it hurts so much knowing that my brothers and sisters in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Palestine as a whole are struggling to have even the littlest of things, including part of my own family. Knowing that innocent children, mothers, and fathers are being assaulted, taken away, bombed, and starved every minute that I'm safe under the roof of my own home. I know my words alone may not be enough to change your minds, but I really do hope after all these meetings and all these speeches, you take action, you choose to do something good, and you call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Your decision is important and it matters to us, and I really do hope that you don't disappoint us again. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope. Ma'am, during public comment, thank you, then you may leave. Good evening.
Good evening. Just waiting for my time to restart.
One moment, let's get the timer for you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Kornberg, and that was a tough act to follow. I really hope that Donna, who was just up here before me, runs for city council someday and maybe is sitting in your chair. I hope that many other people that are speaking today are also sitting in your chair one day to be able to take seriously the act of democracy that they are participating in. I am here as an ally. I am a Jewish American, and I am just absolutely horrified that I have to be here, that I was asked to be here to come out and support my brothers and sisters who have been up here on the mic, meeting after meeting, asking for you to consider a ceasefire resolution. And it's just not being taken seriously. Even during this meeting, we're pushed to the end of the agenda. I think there's like a real contentiousness going on here, and I'm really like having a hard time understanding, or really accepting the way that folks are being treated in the community, and they see it. They're the people that are voting for you. They're the ones that are supporting you, Mayor Teresa, all council members. I appreciate you listening to everyone here, but I think it's unfortunate that the level of respect could be much higher, and that we could not have to be out here week after week doing public comment like this. So I'm a Jewish American. I'm here today because what I see going on and what we heard from, we have a Holocaust survivor in the room here. We may have others. We probably have descendants of the Holocaust as well. And my family, we grew up learning about the Holocaust. I started learning about the Holocaust when I was probably 3 years old. I went to Hebrew school. It was something we were all taught about. We thought it could never happen again. Never in my lifetime did I think it would be my people perpetuating what is going on right now in Palestine. And not only that they've been perpetuating this since 1948. And we were all lied to about it. And I'm a part of a growing movement of Jewish people that are represented here today. A lot of us are younger generation. I'm definitely on the older end of things. But it's a changing tide of what it means to be a Jewish American. And we're represented right here in your community. And for us, we know that what we're seeing happening right now is a genocide. And it's a genocide that's being perpetuated by the state of Israel against Palestinian people across Palestine and especially in Gaza. We can't forget that it's happening across the territory and that it's been happening it's been happening for most of the last 100 years, and what's happening right now is something that I don't think, and no one here has any words for. It's just, I literally don't have words for what's happening. We're up here asking you to support a ceasefire resolution, as others have said, because it's the one thing that we can do. I keep saying there's nothing we can do. We've been calling, we've been texting, we've been showing up at offices. I've been to DC, I've been to Chicago. I've been organizing with my fellow Jews and saying, please listen to us. Not all Jews are represented by Zionism. We know, we see what's happening. We see the US's interest in Israel. We see it as the colonial state that it is, and we see that it doesn't keep us safe as Jewish people. We know that. We are the front lines of this imperial war. But no one's listening to us. Little pieces get taken up. Yes, we get some, we have some support here and there, and we're coming to our city councils because we as Americans say that we are a democracy. And again, we have people like Donna, who is here before me, and lots of other people in this community who are speaking with you, who are coming here, who are taking part, I think, quite generously and really very admirably in this process, which does nothing to exemplify the horrors that are going on in Gaza. We're sitting here speaking very calmly. We're very nicely asking. And this is something that you can do that would respect their wishes. And I would say, as a city council person, in my job, I'm an urban sociologist. I very much understand that you have limitations. All of that money that's being sent to Israel could be helping your people right here in Farmington Hills.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Rich and distinguished leaders of Farmington Hills. My name is Barbara Weinberg Bearfield. I am a resident of Detroit. Although I spend time in Farmington Hills, I have friends here, I shop here, I value this community, and I want to speak from my heart, both as a Jew and as an American. My family is a second generation immigrants. They came here to escape pogroms. They came here to escape the Holocaust. I have Holocaust survivors in my family. They came here for peace, for justice, and equality. They came here because we offered the United States a model of what equality and justice is supposed to be about. And I did not come here, and my family did not come here, to witness and be part of another genocide of another group of people. We came here never again to see this kind of terror and horror happen to another group of people. I was born in 1950, 2 years after what is the Nakba, considered the Nakba, or also a catastrophe or a Holocaust to the Palestinian people. Some 750,000 people were pushed out of their homes and could never return to their homes. As a Jewish person, I could go to Israel and become a citizen. I could be given a home. For free, I could have a home. I would be welcome. But yet, Palestinians who had generation after generation of family living in villages and in cities and in homes in what is called Israel or Palestine could not come back to their own home. I know people who are Nakba survivors in their 80s and cannot go back to their own home. Other people, Jewish people, have taken their homes. Now, we're here in Farmington Hills, and what does this have to do with Farmington Hills? Well, billions of dollars of our taxpayer money that should be coming back to our communities for our education, for our health and well-being, healthcare, climate, all the things that we want to have as our infrastructure to improve the quality of life of our towns, our cities, our citizens in the United States, is being used to buy military equipment to kill people. 32,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Most of those are women and children. You've seen the footage, the TV of the rubble that is now people's homes. We don't know how many thousands of people are dead under that rubble. But we do know, and we've talked about the children that are being traumatized. They can't go to schools. There's no school, there's no normal life, there's no health care. I have 2 family members, my daughter and my husband, who are suffering from cancer. If they were in Gaza, they couldn't even go to hospitals to be cared for. They would die. I am asking everyone to have the humanity to realize that we are all connected globally. We are all connected in our humanity, and that we need to do whatever we can, whether it is to come out to a protest, whether it's to write a letter, whether it's to go to our elected officials.
Excuse me. No signs above the shoulders. Thank you. I beg your pardon.
Whether it's to go to our elected officials, like
You're going to hold a sign, be sitting.
like you. Everybody needs to do what they can to stand up for peace, to stand up for justice. These are what Americans, what our democracy tells us, what our religions tell us, what our faith tells us, what our belief in humanity and the goodness of people tell us. We need to stand up in every way we can and make a statement whenever we can. You are the leaders of this community. Set examples for your children, for your grandchildren, for the next generations, that we are a country that stands for peace and justice. We have brains. Why are we putting it into bombs? We need to use our intelligence to come up with a negotiated peace, and everybody from our city council members, our unions, our places of worship, everybody needs to make a public statement that we are for peace, for a ceasefire, for humanity, and we are not going to send billions of our money for anything but humanitarian aid and the quality of life, to improve the quality of life for people all over the world and in our own towns and communities. I beg you to consider a ceasefire resolution and do it right away. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Thank you. The sign cannot be over your shoulders, madam, or you may leave. And now you may leave. You are out of order.
Officer.
You are out of order. Good evening.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Halima Halilovic, and I live here in Farmington Hills. And this is my 5th time coming here to City Council to talk about the ceasefire resolution for Gaza. Over the past few months, this has been an ongoing conflict and has been affecting people in Farmington Hills. transcending religious and cultural boundaries. So at the moment, it's not Muslims versus Jews or anything else. It's a collective call for what's right. This conflict has brought us together, reminding us of our shared humanity and the need for peace. The only way for Farmington Hills to truly amplify its voice is through a decisive and unified stance, a ceasefire resolution. It's disheartening that you cannot consider even placing a ceasefire resolution on the agenda for discussion, let alone even consider passing a resolution. I hope you can consider a ceasefire resolution and use this decision as a way to amplify our voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Council
Yes.
Attorney, words are hard tonight. We have people in the hallway who are posting signs on the wall behind the council chamber. Can you please advise as to the rules of posting signs in the city hall?
Yes, certainly. So the city has adopted facility use policies that address the use of City Hall. And inside council chambers, council has adopted its rules of procedures. In City Hall, there is no posting of signs allowed in City Hall. And what we're viewing here, I don't think it can be shown on the cameras, but it is at least 4 signs that are now posted in City Hall facing inward to the city council meeting. They're above shoulder level. If they were to be considered part of this meeting, they're above shoulder level. The rules were established at the beginning of the meeting for not above shoulder level. I think for both of those reasons, and admittedly, I think they're being raised because they're somewhat distracting to council. Council is trying to focus on the speakers. These are posted up in the air about 6 feet or above and are somewhat distracting to the meeting, which is part of the purpose for the city council's rule about keeping it below shoulder level, so it's not blocking anybody, not distracting the business of city council, and paying attention and listening to the speakers that are standing up here. There is the rule that was announced about not disrupting the speaker, distracting the speaker, or attention to the speaker, or the ability to focus on the speaker. For all these reasons, I think council would be justified in asking for those signs to be removed with at least a warning.
I'm asking for signs to be removed. And if the people do not remove the signs, they are to be removed. There is, well, so I'm pretty sure the city manager is out there talking to them right now.
It's right there.
Oh, city manager.
Officers will have the signs removed.
Thank you.
It's against facility use policy.
And if they are unable to remove the signs, then they will have to leave the city hall. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, dear respected city council members. My name is Mohammed Halilovich, longtime resident of Farmington Hills, and this is my 5th time here as well, shown before you, to urge for immediate action for this city council to call for an immediate ceasefire resolution to stop the genocide in Gaza and Palestine. Our city is facing a crucial moment. The United Nations Security Council just passed a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, a call echoed by many cities across the nation as well too. Yet within these walls, our voices remain unheard. Despite the urgent pleas of our constituents, the call for action falls on deaf ears. So how can we stand as stewards of this community, continue to turn away from the suffering of our fellow human beings? Silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. By refusing to even consider a ceasefire resolution, we've become accomplices to the ongoing genocide. We cannot claim ignorance when the cries of the oppressed echo through our streets. But there is hope. Across our nation, over 70 cities have taken a stand for justice by passing a ceasefire resolution. Even our nation's leaders, including President Joe Biden, Senator Chuck Schumer, are also calling for an end to the violence. The momentum is undeniable, and the history will judge us by our response in this critical moment. What stands before you today is not just a petition or a request. It is the unified voice of our community demanding justice and peace. Each signature, each call Each protest is a testament to the urgency of this issue. As representatives of Farmington Hills, you were not elected solely to manage city affairs. You were chosen to listen to the concerns of our people and to act with compassion and integrity. These are not partisan issues, they're matters of fundamental human rights. I urge each of you to search your hearts, to heed the calls of your constituents, and to find the courage to act. It is not too late to make a difference, to show the world that Farmington Hills stands on the side of justice and humanity. Let us not be remembered as the council that remains silent in the face of genocide. Let us be remembered as the council that stood up for what is right, that spoke out against injustice, and that fought tirelessly for the values that define us as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Set the timer, please.
Oh, sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Miriam Abu Shaban. I'm 18 years old and I'm a student in nursing school. I can tell you time and time again about numbers and statistics and suffering. We can all see it. And as many people have mentioned, we're not numbers, we're people. As personal as hobbies and your favorite color and what you like to wear, we're people. I want to start talking about some imperfections of the human mind. I went into my clinical days and I saw people who suffered, and I don't think the human mind is capable of seeing suffering and feeling true empathy for suffering. I saw people who were in terrible, terrible condition, and it is nothing compared to the people of Palestine. Another thing, I'm a US citizen, but I moved here from the Middle East. And something that I've noticed about the culture of the United States is that it's a culture of individualism. I was recently speaking to a nurse practitioner that I work with, and I was telling her about my family in Palestine, one of the biggest families in Gaza right now. I was telling her about it, and she told me, well, it's different caring for your neighbor's kid because they're not your kid. And that stuck with me. That appalled me. That she didn't think about having the humanity for somebody else's child. They're a child. And we don't have the heart to care for them as if they are our own. They're not just our neighbors in proximity, they're our neighbors in humanity. People my age don't think that they can make an impact. It takes one person to influence hundreds and then hundreds of thousands. And I believe you have that power to influence that many people. And with a call for a ceasefire, you show where you stand and you show what you believe in. This is my first meeting at a city council. And I was really surprised by the rules that were set in place for the people here who chose to come here and stand in front of you and represent the constituents of Farmington Hills. I don't live in Farmington Hills, but I still came to support the cause for a ceasefire. Because the US Constitution says we are the people. We the people, I'm sorry. We are people. There are people here who are speaking to you from their hearts, from their experiences, from their numbers, from the things that they've seen, and that all has changed their beliefs or has further perpetuated their beliefs. The belief for a ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Melina Paratsakis. This is also my 5th time coming here. So I want to say that I think this council is kind of built on double standard. Back in 2005, you passed that resolution that you won't be taking a stand in more international affairs, but then you passed the support in resolution for Ukraine and Armenia, and that's a double standard. And you won't pass one for the Palestinian people. You don't want to pass a ceasefire resolution. So that's an example of double standard. So just kind of listen to us when we talk to you instead of Just kind of pretending that you're listening, or maybe just kind of looking at us or whatever. And just join the other Michigan cities that have passed the resolution. Somebody else has already named them off, like Detroit, Traverse City, Dearborn Heights, Northville, Hamtramck, you know. The logic that this city's voice does not matter is null and void when there's other cities that have passed the resolution for a ceasefire. Your excuses mean nothing when other cities had no problem doing it. So join the list of cities that passed the resolution, because the more cities that join, that pass it, like Mr. Randy Bruce said a couple meetings ago, maybe Joe Biden will finally notice, oh wow, a lot of Michigan cities have passed a resolution for a ceasefire. Maybe he'll acknowledge it.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Farmington City Council members. My name is Jenna Paratakis, and I am 12 years old, and I am about at least 30 years younger than most of you. So just a question to think about while you guys are listening to the rest of the speeches. Why is it that I can see humanity and you guys can't? So somebody before me mentioned like that she hopes that one day the people here are sitting in your city council seats, and I agree, because at least we can count on those people to uphold humanity and fight for what's right. We learn about the Holocaust in school, and we agree it's horrendous acts, but and we all agree that whenever we learn about something horrible in history, that if we were at that time, we would speak out against it. But this is that time. This is another Holocaust, and this is appalling to watch. And I don't understand how you guys can listen to our speeches, hear the statistics, which you don't need to hear them again because you're not ignorant, you're being arrogant. But how can you say that, yes, if I was alive during the Holocaust, then I would speak out against it and not speak out about this genocide in Gaza? And then you guys, somebody else mentioned showing respect to the people here. You guys are just grasping at straws now. Like, nobody's distracted by the signs in the hallway. The only way somebody would be distracted is if those signs were the truth and it made those people uncomfortable to read the truth and know that they're not listening to it. This is my 5th time at a city council meeting, and I've been up late. I'm on spring break right now, so I'm happy to be here, and I'm not waking up for school tomorrow. But many other times, I've been extremely tired in the morning. There are so many other things I could be doing on a Monday night, yet I'm standing here because I see that I need to advocate for human rights, because what I'm seeing over there in Gaza is very wrong. Kids my age are taking care of their younger siblings because their parents are dead, their families are dead. That is wrong. And you guys recognize that? Or maybe you guys don't recognize that. Maybe you guys just don't feel that it's wrong. But why you wouldn't call for a ceasefire is just, I don't understand it. So, Gaza would stand up, like somebody else mentioned earlier. Gaza would stand up for Farmington Hills if we were in their predicament. So why aren't we standing up for Gaza? And all of our neighboring cities around us are standing up. So what makes Farmington Hills so special that they don't have to call for a ceasefire? I don't understand. You guys keep a straight face while we hear about babies being burned alive. Like, you guys look at us and some of you smile. It's weird. You guys write notes to each other, look at your computers, your phones. Some of you guys aren't paying attention right now. So how is that possible when you hear this appalling things? Like, wouldn't you hope that if Gaza the roles were reversed, that if you were being burned alive, somebody would have the decency to look at you, look at the people standing up for you? Yeah, I would be hopeful that somebody else would do that. Anyways, thank you. Please call for a ceasefire.
Thank you. Good evening.
First, I'd like to say, and I hope I'm saying this in the right context, Ramadan Kareem to everyone here and to those watching online.
Your name, please?
Stacy.
And you live where?
Here.
Thank you.
We've been here week after week with a simple ask for our elected officials in the Farmington Hills City Council to pass a ceasefire resolution to condemn the ongoing atrocities being committed in Palestine, especially in Gaza. Despite dozens of us speaking at every city council meeting since early January, the council still refuses to do this. We've told you our own reasons for wanting a ceasefire resolution to be passed, including from literal children. You've heard testimony from a survivor of the Bosnian genocide, who probably knows what a genocide looks like. And you've completely ignored the fact that he has said that what Israel is doing is genocide and must stop immediately, and that we must pass a ceasefire resolution for this city. You've heard the numbers of martyred, injured, and missing Palestinians multiple times every meeting. I myself told you the story of Hind Rajab, a 6-year-old child who was left in the car with her family's deceased bodies for several hours, and who then witnessed the summary executions.
Shoulder or below, please. Thank you. Shoulder or below, please.
And who then witnessed the summary executions of the Red Crescent team, Ahmed Al-Mathoun and Youssef Zaino, sent to rescue her by an Israeli tank, only for her to then be murdered by Israeli forces herself.
All right.
My comrades played the audio of Hind's calls to the Red Crescent and her mom later that evening, and still you did not pass a ceasefire resolution. A few weeks went by and we were in this room imploring you again, once again, to pass a resolution. I even played the audio of Aaron Bushnell, a 25-year-old Air Force serviceman who self-immolated to protest the genocide in Palestine, particularly the U.S.'s direct involvement. And still, you didn't pass a ceasefire resolution. So I've been racking my brain, and nearly 7 months into a genocide that you can watch in 4K on your phones. There's only a few reasons I can think of for why you won't pass a simple ceasefire resolution. You either personally believe in and support the ongoing Israeli genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, their land, and their culture, or maybe there's just not enough money to be made or too much money to lose by passing a ceasefire resolution. Regardless of which reasons it is, it's disgusting, it's racist, it's cruel, it's morally repugnant, and it's certainly unbefitting of elected members of our government. So if you continue to not pass a ceasefire resolution, these are a few of the things that this city council will be saying it tacitly supports. The deliberate starvation of a population of 2 million people of food, water, and medicine, which includes the murders of children Yahya and Muhammad Habush, both of whom died of malnutrition and lack of treatment due to the ongoing Israeli siege on Gaza. On that topic, so-called Israel also assassinated multiple Gaza police officers and community and tribal leaders who had successfully coordinated the distribution of aid in northern Gaza, include Brigadier General Faik al-Mabhou. And that picture of that car is a different car of a Gaza police vehicle in Rafah, where at least 3 police officers were targeted and assassinated by Israel when they were escorting flour. They were escorting flour to hungry, starving people, and they were killed. The murder of Farish al-Halak, an elderly Alzheimer's patient, Israeli forces shot him at Al-Shifa Hospital and left him to bleed to death. Israel used a drone to shoot and kill 4 Palestinian youths as they walked through the rubble of what used to be their homes. 2 of the youths had survived the initial attack, but after Israel allowed them to walk a few steps, they targeted and murdered them both in separate strikes. And it also includes multiple murders of multiple American citizens dating back all the way to June 8th of 1967, when Israeli forces deliberately attacked the USS Liberty, killed 34 US sailors, attempted to kill 171 others because, yeah, you can look it up, they admitted they wanted to sink it. Rachel Corrie, a peace activist who was ran over by an Israeli bulldozer on March 16th, 2003, when she was protesting the proposed demolition of a Palestinian home in Rafah. Her last words were, "I think my back is broken." Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian-American Christian reporter for Al Jazeera, who was murdered by an Israeli sniper. And we have Tawfiq Abdel-Jabbar and Mohammed Ahmad Al-Dur, who were murdered just these past months, January and February of 2024. And I'll leave you with these last words, because I'm almost out of time, in that, in the words of famous Iraqi-British rapper Loki, "You can try to avoid us, but it's pointless, because you can never avoid the voices of the voiceless."
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Well, I bet you all wish you were somewhere else tonight, right? Must be pretty uncomfortable sitting up there.
And your name and where you live, please?
My name's Andrew. I live in Wawiyatanong. That's Anishinaabe for this area. We live on unceded land that was stewarded for generations by the indigenous people here. Now, unfortunately, our riverways are polluted by PFAS and our planet's burning because we're not good caretakers of this land. But why am I here tonight, right? Well, I'm here because I'm Jewish, and it's really important for me to think about, like how my people got to this place, right? So most of my people actually didn't make it to this place. They were killed in the Holocaust, right? The Shoah. And the US only really let a few of my family members in. The rest actually were held in the Soviet Union and not allowed to leave because they were engineers, or one of them was, so they wanted to keep his brain there, basically. And then once he was finally allowed out, where was his family going to go? And really the only place that would accept him was the state of Israel. But let's think about how the state of Israel was founded, because I think that there's a lot of competing narratives, right? And as a Jewish person, it's been really important for me to try and understand, what does it mean to have claim to this land? What does it mean to have the right to a nation? So if we look back historically, it was actually a British colony before it was the state of Israel. It was called the Palestinian Mandate. And so around the end of World War II, the British were giving up a lot of their colonies. All around the world, there's this move towards decolonization, right? And as the British were giving up their colonies, the natural thought would be to give it to the Palestinian people who lived there. But unfortunately, there was a group of Zionist militants, what we would call terrorists today, that were far-right reactionaries that used the language of colonization and making the desert bloom to create narratives of unused land and frame themselves as the natural, more advanced people that would come into this place and save it from being this desert where no one lived. But that's a totally false narrative, right? Because there were tons of people who lived there. There was a thriving economy. There was a deep connection to land. Palestinian Land Day is actually later this week. There's a lot of talk about the olive groves and people's connection to place there. So let me not get caught up too much in the weeds around that. But basically, the British were maneuvered by these Zionist militias who were, as the speaker before me pointed out, using violent terrorist tactics to apply political pressure in order to pass the legal stewardship of the land, not to the Palestinian people, but to the Jewish people who were displaced from Europe during the Shoah. So that's how some of my relatives ended up in Israel. And once they're there, people are trying to figure things out. No group is a monolith, right? So some of my relatives actually served in the military. A lot of them do. Actually, it's required. So now pretty much all of them have. But one in particular that I want to talk about, his name is Chen. He served in the Special Forces. He was given medals of honor for helping rescue hostages during the Six-Day War. And then he spent the rest of his life trying to correct some of these dangerous narratives about the Palestinian people being dangerous, about Jews being the ones who have the right to that land. And he's done this, throughout the rest of his life, trying to make up for the fact that he was a member of the Israeli Defense Force, or what's also called the Israeli Occupation Force. And I would say that's more accurate. And I have another relative in Israel whose name is Tali. She's a historian. She does work on Palestinian villages that have been forcibly evacuated, or massacred. These are sites of massacres, right? There's bodies, there's destruction, and people have been forced out and forced into places like Gaza.
Thank you. That's your time, sir.
So the creation of
Good evening.
Gaza is
Thank
the
you.
containment
That's your time,
of
sir.
people who have been forced out of the rest of the land of Israel.
Sir, that's your time. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Nope, no snapping. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Anum. I'm local. I live on Turtle Island. This is my first time at Farmington Hills City Council, and frankly, I'm exhausted. So I can't imagine the people who have been here 4 or 5 times, how they feel. And if I could just posit something, Gary, this is specifically looking at you, sir. If you could look at me and make eye contact with people who are here to talk to you, that'd be great. I'm going to posit that it's not actually the signs. Yes.
You address your comments to council. He's the city manager. You're talking to us.
Very well. So does Carly count?
Just
this
Mr.
council?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't know Sure. Well, multiple council members have been looking down at their screens and on their phones, and I've seen constituents run outside the doors and in tears while they're talking about their family members being decimated and limbs being chopped off. And so I'm going to posit it's not really the signs that are distracting, but maybe you guys who are distracted already. It's been frankly, quite frankly, this is absolutely ridiculous. Very. So at this point, your constituents, I think it's very clear this is a local issue. You've heard from basically everybody, right? Various different constituents. This is not a Palestinian issue. This is not just a Jewish issue. This is not a Muslim issue. This is not an issue that's foreign. This is affecting your very constituents that are here. We don't need performative allies. We don't need people who say one thing and then do another. I'm sure you guys have heard and are very well aware about the uncommitted campaign that Michigan led against President Biden to hold him accountable. When we have officials that are elected to do something and they don't do it, frankly, constituents are tired of it. So we are taking note. We are taking note of allies that are performative, that reach out to their constituents and tell them that they are there for them, and as soon as they are elected, the tides turn. We are taking note of who in our elected officials will actually reach out and help us. Because when you say you are for the people and the people are out here in this room and you are not reflective of those people, you're not for the people. So come November, rest assured that we will elect people who are actually for us. And I'm going to give you some of your time back since clearly, you still need to recoup so you can pay attention to the next speaker. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Good evening. Sophie? Good evening.
I want everyone, can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you all hear me? I want everyone sitting in this room to know that during the council recess, Mayor Teresa came up to me and told me that there is no way ceasefire for Gaza is going on the agenda.
Sophie, please
I
address
told
council.
her that we will keep coming, to which she replied, "I'll see you next meeting." At this point, it's clear that this is not a matter of caring for her constituents, but a battle of wills for her. And I promise you all, the will of the people will always prevail. Now, Haley Stevens has publicly said that she will not support ceasefire. Her position is that the bombs should continue to crush the skulls of children. And why wouldn't she want that? She got $4 million from AIPAC. And someone else gets money from Haley Stevens. Someone has worked for Haley Stevens for several years and still does. That person is Zach Rich, son of Mayor Teresa Rich. There's an enormous conflict of interest here, Mayor Teresa. By the laws of the City Council, you should recuse yourself from any input on a ceasefire resolution. You are also funded by the Jewish Federation against ceasefire. You should recuse yourself, Mayor Teresa. Now, Mayor Teresa and this City Council voted to demolish Marvin's...
Time down. Thank you.
Mayor Teresa and this city council voted to demolish Marvin's Marvelous Mechanical Museum and build a Myers despite 50,000 signatures in support of Marvin's. Teresa and the city council did so in the winter of 2023. Why? Because in 2023, the landowner, RPT Realty, merged with Kimco, the American name for BIG Shopping, a company traded on the Israeli exchange. Teresa and the city council sold out Marvin's so that more money could flow directly to Israel from Farmington Hills, just as Israel was committing genocide. Then Mayor Teresa lied to us at the meeting that Myers was her local business, and we're not. Nobody's gonna shop at your Israeli Myers. Nobody is gonna shop at your Israeli Myers. And everybody will know what you did. There are actually a lot of Israeli property investments in Farmington Hills. But let's also talk about how this city council at the last meeting, March 4th, said yes, 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 yes to Motorola. They lied to us and pulled the wool over our eyes. Motorola is the sole supplier of the 4G network for the Israeli army. This city council has approved countless contracts with companies which not only fund the genocide, but are directly murdering people in the genocide. Farmington Hills makes contracts that make it lucrative, such as CAT. Look outside. Look outside at all the lovely construction. What does CAT do in Palestine? They bulldoze houses in the West Bank and Gaza so that settlers can steal Palestinian homes. In February, last month, CAT created routes for the Israeli army to invade Gaza. And yes, CAT bulldozed over and crushed human beings to death at the Kamal Adwan Hospital. And this is the company that this city council has made contracts with for Farmington Hills. In fact, 90% of Farmington Hills tax money comes from just 10 companies, most of which are committing murder in Palestine. All of you look sinister and evil when you choose to be complicit in genocide. A large part of our community voted for you, Mayor Teresa, because you fooled us with a platform of diversity. You barely won. Only 500 votes got you to win. Our community isn't going to vote for anyone who doesn't speak up against genocide. We just had a petition, and we got, in a matter of days, over 500 votes. None of you are going to win. You want to go again for city council? You want to do Congress? Whatever you're dreaming of? You're going to lose. You need our votes. We had over 100,000 votes uncommitted in almost just a week, barely a week against Biden. You think that your Jewish Federation votes are going to help you?
Thank you. Next, please. Let's refrain from comments. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Heidi West, and I'm actually a Ferndale resident, not Farmington Hills. But I came here to represent the Ferndale Palestinian Solidarity Coalition. I was one of the original speakers in Ferndale for a ceasefire resolution in November, when there were just 3 of us speaking for a ceasefire resolution in Ferndale. It took 4 months, thousands of signatures, emails, meetings just like this, but not as many people speaking. I don't think we ever had a meeting that was this full, with so many different voices from your community. But we finally passed a ceasefire proclamation in Ferndale. We wanted a resolution, but we were happy with the proclamation. So what was a proclamation, and why did we pass it in Ferndale? Mayor Rich, I heard you speak about the fact that Farmington Hills doesn't do these types of resolutions, but The hypocrisy has been talked about in the fact that you did pass one for Ukraine and the Armenian genocide. This is a genocide. And a month ago, our mayor pro tem said the exact same thing that you all are saying here. I think you and her are very similar. You're both very practical people, and you think this is an issue that doesn't pertain to you. But you said you went to DC and you asked our representatives to do something, so I think maybe some of you do care about what your community has asked you, but you're afraid. I think you're afraid to have Farmington Hills on public record as supporting this. And I've possibly heard some of the reasons why you might be afraid just now and throughout this meeting. And I assure you that Ferndale City Council members were afraid too. Maybe because of outside forces that asked them not to. So I want you to think about who you're centering when you've heard a few voices from the other side, but I haven't heard those voices here. In 4 months, you haven't heard those voices here. You've heard the voices asking for a resolution. So Ferndale finally had the bravery to decide not to be hypocrites and pass a proclamation because their city community asked them to. And that's what your job is. Your job is to do what your community members ask you to do. Nothing has happened in Ferndale. They're fine. They've gone about their way, gone on to other issues in the city. They've received nothing but praise from their community because 60% of Americans support a ceasefire. So I want to end this by saying the civil rights movement started at the local level. City council meetings just like this. And people told the people in the civil rights movement that nothing would come of coming to their city council members when their higher ups didn't do anything. But you have the power to do something. So do the right thing, be on the right side of history, listen to your community, do what Ferndale did when they felt the exact same way you did, and pass this ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Afrah. I'm a resident of Farmington Hills. And I'm going to make a very short statement, but I did want to say that I don't want to speak for everybody, but I'm sort of going to speak for everybody by saying that what's frustrating for all of us is the fact that, you know, we come here week after week pouring our hearts out to you, and everyone sharing their very unique experience and how it's affected them, their families, their communities. And I hate to say this, but I have not felt an ounce of sympathy or compassion from your end. Forget the community at large, just for your constituents here in Farmington Hills. If anything, I feel there's like a lot of pushback. We notice a lot of agitation. We notice a lot of just a not so welcoming atmosphere. And if that comes from us being passionate about what we believe in, then that's a sad state that we're in. And I hear a lot of our community members specifically talking about pass this resolution, pass this resolution. I know it's not gonna pass, I'll be honest. I have no faith that this group will pass it. What my hope was that at least you would put it to a vote and just go on record letting your constituents know where you stand. The fact that that can't happen is very telling. And I just wanted to make that very clear. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Faria Faisidi, and I'm a resident here. I don't know what I could possibly say that hasn't already been said, but I'm adding my voice to the voices that have come before me tonight because it feels like the cause is greater than, what I feel like I can or can't say. I've been coming for the past few meetings, on and off for the past 2 months. And we have tried begging you to pass a ceasefire resolution. We've tried appeasing your moral conscience. We've tried to educate you on the issue, chalking it up sometimes to innocent ignorance. We've tried sympathizing with the limits of your position, as in maybe it's out of the bounds of the city to pass a resolution, something that's been laughably untrue, as so many people have debunked before me. We've tried exposing your ties to various lobby groups and interest parties so eloquently as people have done. All of it has fallen on deaf ears, and all of it has resulted in nothing. I thought that you thought maybe the conflict was far away, but now I realize you think we are too. We tried to persuade you with the idea that you would serve us, your constituents, as a part of yourself. But it's clear that you view us just as far away as the genocide is. Except for today, I think I was so deeply moved by the solidarity that has been displayed here tonight from people of different faith backgrounds, so many allies, people who hold different intersecting identities. I think I feel renewed in my belief that even if the government bankrolls colonial violence and funds a genocide, and local government and city councils put their hands up as if they're helpless, there are people who can still see through all the rhetoric. There is violence happening, unimaginable violence being perpetrated on the Palestinian people, sanctioned by the United States, aided by our tax dollars, more than 1 million of which is from Farmington Hills. Yeah, the freedom of Palestine is tied with the liberation of all of humanity from all kinds of violence, colonialism, imperialism, apartheid, because it represents what is so wrong about our current world order. It is no doubt that Israel is the United States' strategic stronghold in the Middle East. It is no doubt that this country will and has gone to any length to maintain its geopolitical dominance over the entire world. It will color anyone into a hero if it wants, and it will make anyone into a villain if it wants. Palestine exposes the vile moral repugnance of this country. And you seem to be more consistently interested in maintaining a maddening sense of decorum than listening to your own constituents. We keep trying to appease to humanity and to tell you to stand for what you believe in, but after coming here for a few months now, I'm genuinely confused if you see anything more than a nuisance before you, week after week. I'm humbled and renewed in my hope by the solidarity shown here today. We will keep showing up week after week, and we will not tire, and we will continue to organize and mobilize until a ceasefire resolution is passed by this very council. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. How's everybody doing? I just came from my mosque. It's Ramadan, you all know that. Several of you have contacted me and reached out. Thank you all for that. Had a beautiful prayer, over 800 people, 800 constituents of Farmington Hills, all gathering for prayer in this holy month of Ramadan. It was beautiful, it's inspiring, it raises your spirits. And then my wife texted me, she was here. She represented our family. We're gonna always represent ourselves here. And she said, Irfan, they moved the council comments before public comment. Now, I understand it might have been to accommodate us, so I thank you all. In the past, I've called you out to make you make comments during council comments, so I appreciate that. But then, wow, staff seating back here now? Hearing that you guys are gonna limit the comments to 3 minutes? Got a timer up here for me so I know exactly how much time I got left? This is childish, guys. We did not pull stunts. We tried to move you all. I invoked you all to be courageous. These aren't stunts that we're pulling with signs, guys. These aren't stunts that I'm pulling when I get up here and speak to you all. This is week 5, and I've come every week, and I've met with all of you privately as well. These aren't stunts that you get to show us the decorum that you have as a city council to remove the people holding signs, to cut our comments down to 3 minutes. This is not about decorum, that's childish. Who's pulling your strings, guys? I've met with you all privately. Privately, what do you tell me? We hate what's happening to the people in Gaza. And privacy is gone, guys. Tell me what you think in public. Some of you told me you went and spoke to Haley Stevens, and you said our constituents want you all to vote again for a ceasefire in the US representatives. But we talked to Haley privately. No more privacy, guys. Come out in public. Every Western power in this world is calling for a ceasefire, save for one. who abstained today. And they probably abstained because they said it has nothing to do with city business. This is childish. The stunts that you guys are pulling now as a city council, this city will never be the same. We've all lost our trust in you. Even the allies. Put the resolution to a vote, guys. Come on. Allies? You're our allies. We'll vote you all in. You know who you are. But be brave. Be courageous. What's the opposite of courageous? Cowardice. That's what I'm seeing in my city council. This city is changing before my very eyes. And I hope we address something else. There are allies in this city. You guys tried to make this into a Muslim issue. This isn't a Muslim issue. Stop referring to it by the courtesy that you give to the Muslim community. This is not a Muslim issue. There are Christians in Gaza. There are atheists in Gaza. We're talking about faith. This is beyond faith now. This is humanity. So stop making it a Muslim issue. And I'm saying that as somebody who is a Muslim, who's very happy at the fact that my city council does listen to my voice as a Muslim. But this issue is no longer a Muslim issue. You've seen Michigan United come out and speak to you. You've seen other allies of other faiths come and speak to you. This is not something that's only being organized for the Muslim community. So if you pat us on the back or throw us a pool time, it's not doing anything for this particular issue. Now, many city councils have called for a ceasefire. Counties and states are now calling for ceasefires. I told you all in week 1, this is a grassroots movement. Join the movement. Push your people. Be brave and courageous to anybody who's pulling your strings and telling you not to do this. If you're concerned about the businesses in this city, stand with your constituency. If you're concerned about the minority that seems to never be showing up in here, stand with your constituency. Stand with the people that are showing up here. Otherwise, what's the use of city council? What's the use of public comment? Just so you can fix the roads? I can hire a city manager and do that without the 7 of you. All right? This is now anger. This is no longer frustration. Last time I came to you all with frustration. I put you all on 14 Mile with the Meyer you're building, and I said that's where 1.6 million people are standing. Frustration is gone. This is now anger. This city is going to change before your very eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, City Council. My name's Pete. I've been here 1,000 times, it feels like. I keep on talking to you guys. Who's the weasel that put this this setup over here? Who did this? Was it Gary over here? Did you do this? Who did this?
Council, please.
People that had signs last week. Maybe because you guys couldn't hear, maybe you could read. They even had color. Those right there. You guys maybe can tell the color, you know? But the problem is you guys don't pay attention at all, it seems like. We come and talk to you here. You guys have all met with different constituents asking for the same damn thing, but you guys just sit up there pompous. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. Teresa's not going to do it. You're just so powerful. You're going to be out of here soon, okay? You're going to be done. And your name, the Rich family name, is not going to be running in Farmington Hills anymore. For no seats. Mr. Dwyer, you were a police commissioner for years. 2 days, less than a week ago, they gunned down in Gaza the police commissioner. They gunned him down. I don't know what police officers, everybody. No respect for any of that. Law-abiding, you know, they're holding the law in the city over there. And I'm just speaking to you because this is the latest thing that happened. This should touch your heartstrings. You've been doing it for 50 years. I've listened to your church. I've listened to video of you guys speaking in church. Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ. Hallelujah. Peace, peace, peace. Why don't you vote for it? I don't understand. We sit here and ask you and ask you and ask you, begging you. I don't understand, and none of you speak to say what is the problem with it. We all know you got no backbones, okay? So what I'm asking is just put it for a vote. Let me see your name on paper. Yay, nay, I don't care. No one cares anymore. But I want to know where you stand, and then I can make my decision November, the next November, okay?
Thank you. Sir, did you already speak? Sir?
Yes, I did.
And we're set. Thank you.
I was the first speaker, and I didn't understand the full context until most recently.
I understand, sir,
So
but
if I could just say a few words, please? So I'll make it very quick. I just heard some reference to AIPAC and what's called the Jewish lobby. So I didn't hear all of the comments, but I heard a few of them, and it's very disturbing for me because it's what Israel is doing in Gaza is supported 100% by the Jewish lobby. And the Jewish lobby's role is to go around and pay you guys off. Now, I heard some reference to that in terms of contributions, etc. That's what the Jewish lobby has been doing for many, many years. They're very good at it. In Detroit, in Farmington Hills, etc. The Holocaust Museum, we have friends of the Israeli Defense Forces. Some of the leaders of that are friends of mine. They're Holocaust survivors. Unfortunately, they're very, very strong supporters of this fascist regime that we have today in Israel. Now, the term fascist regime, I know it's not used very often. We talk about extremists, etc., but it's a term that I was raised with as a Holocaust survivor. It describes the people that my father was fighting when he was killed in World War II as an anti-fascist. AIPAC's role is to pay off everybody. AIPAC is considered by the academics, the scholars, controls the Congress, the US Congress. No, to me that's an objective statement. It can be proven. They're proud of it. That's AIPAC, that's the Jewish lobby. And I hope, I also have to assume, I've also spoken in Lansing to various groups, etc. I certainly hope that among you there are some, what we used to call honest people. Some of you are probably paid off fully by AIPAC, probably just care about the money. But some of you do have a conscience, you have families, you have to answer some of the questions of your children, your grandchildren, and you have to struggle with some of these issues. Know that AIPAC makes Israel, makes the Jews pariah people. A pariah people. The world, you got to understand, the world is changing. Look up the BRICS countries. The world is brown and black and turning away from the white European Christian country. They're not paying attention to it anymore. That includes Israel and the United States and Biden. And it's a question for you, which side of history you want to be on. Do you want to be known as someone that was paid off by AIPAC? In the Israel lobby, in Jewish lobby, you should look up the name of Mersheimer, who wrote a book about it, an academic, you know, he's a Princeton guy, etc. But there's been a lot of written, and now on YouTube you can look up the Jewish lobby, etc., in terms of their history and what they do. So for example, what they did right down the street, and 11, last year. What they're doing now is they're going into congressional contests and paying off the Jew who's pro-Israel, right? The Jew who's pro-Israel, they pay him off so he can destroy or she can destroy someone like Andy Levin, who's a little bit more to the left, who's more critical of Israel. AIPAC wants to destroy Andy Levin, and they did. They did. They nominated this woman that you mentioned or something like that, who's very pro-Israel. That's AIPAC. So they are the enemy of someone like me, who's considered pro-Palestinian. You know, I was against the war in Vietnam, etc. Given my history, as a Jewish child survivor, etc. AIPAC, the Jewish community is not united on any of this. There's really two sides of the Jewish community. There's Israel with the fascists on the extreme right, who openly talk about genocide proudly. No time, even the Nazis try to hide their crimes. The right-wing fascists in Israel are proud of it, and they say what their plans are, which is to eliminate the Palestinian people. They're in the process of doing it right under our eyes, so history is being written right now as we speak. So I beg you to please deal with your conscience on this issue. And if the AIPAC has anything to do with it, stay away from it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here not for my personal gain, but I'm here for the people in Gaza. Quit being complicit in this genocide. Quit sitting here and try to justify your inaction. You have the power to put forward a ceasefire resolution, but you refuse to. Why? Why? Why are you putting up such a strong fight against the resolution for Gaza? Why? Why does it not bother you knowing that innocent people are being slaughtered? Why? Why? Why does it not bother you? Why does it bother you when people outside the chambers are holding up signs that call for peace? Why? It was not obscuring my view, so how was it obscuring yours? I promise you that I will keep coming back again and again, and I will keep calling for peace. I will keep standing up for humanity because humanity will always prevail. Oh, and yes, please never, ever, ever again bring up that you guys gave us a pool to swim in. That has been in place for at least 11 years and way before you became mayor. Call for a ceasefire and stop waiting for Gaza to, la samahullah, be demolished. Call for a ceasefire resolution and stand up for justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. My name is Eugene Greenstein. You've heard a lot of conversation today. War is hell. I was born December 7th, 1945, 4 years after Pearl Harbor. World War II started 4 years before I was born. I was a student of war, if you will, World War II. I was a student of Jewish history and pogroms for 2,000 years. The worst pogrom besides the Holocaust occurred in 1941 in Baghdad. 600 to 1,000 Jews were massacred. It wasn't Israel. Israel didn't exist. We've heard a lot of conversation today, but I haven't, unless I missed something, I haven't heard one person condemn Hamas. And Hamas started this. They broke a ceasefire. Yet everybody here says we want a ceasefire, but Hamas broke many ceasefires. So we need somebody talking to Hamas also about a ceasefire.
Let him speak. Let him speak.
And
to me.
so if you look at what happened on 10/7, the leaders of Hamas says we're going to have as many 10/7s as required to destroy Israel. That's a powerful statement. The Hamas Charter, Article 7, calls for the killing of all Jews. So we have an interesting dilemma to solve, to resolve this issue. It is complex. It is beyond the scope of this council. This council did the right thing by not getting into it. We could spend hours talking about the issues. We could depress each other by talking about the massacre that happened on 10/7 and the brutality, et cetera. I don't think that is useful for this meeting. But I would like to see the people who are in this room condemn Hamas if they want a ceasefire, because Hamas broke the ceasefire.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
since just need to clarify a few points that we've tried to make here over and over. As a community, this is not a Muslim versus Jewish issue. It's a humanitarian issue. It's a humanity issue. There is no Hamas in the West Bank, okay? The Israeli apartheid, colonial settler, pariah state, Israel, has been committing atrocities for 100 years. Since October 7th, they've become unhinged, okay? But this has been going on for 100 years. In the West Bank, almost 500 people have been killed in 2023 prior to October 7th, okay? Let's just clarify that. Now, I don't want to keep rehashing everybody's conversation or everybody's speeches, and I am certainly not here to beg you. Never been here to beg you. I've been pointing out things that when I first started coming here thinking, well, I can tell you about Ilan Pappé, Norman Finkelstein, Max Blumenthal, Democracy Now!, so you can educate yourselves and not continue to watch Fox News and think that you are an active, intellectual member of society, okay? Now, I want to just point out that 40% of Farmington Hills now is now minorities. You see our community continues to come, no matter what obstacles you put before us, we're still going to come. We're united, we're strong, we're educated, okay? And we're not going to give up this fight. Now that we've seen everyone's true colors, the so-called allies and the rest, you made it in this office by 500 votes. You came to our mosque, ate our food, and walked around and said, I am with you. I have your values. No, you don't. You are going to be a one-term mayor. You will not be sitting in that seat again. And that goes for quite a few of you, especially Mr. Randy Bruce that's not here right now because he excused himself. You have seen that this community has changed in the last 30 years. And guess what? The Zionists are fleeing this community. They're no longer here. The neighborhood that you live in, Mayor Rich, you know they've been fleeing to West Bloomfield, Bloomfield Hills, Orchard Lake, wherever, they're fleeing. Now this is your community. These are the constituents that you're looking at. This is what your community looks like. You either get with the program, and this goes for all of you, or you're not going to come back. You all know about the abandoned Biden campaign and the 100,000 votes that were uncommitted and the 33,000 votes that were Republican uncommitted. You see the writing on the wall. The demographics of Farmington Hills have changed dramatically. And this city council does not reflect the diversity of this community. It just doesn't. You don't reflect our values. You just don't reflect us as your constituents. You don't care. Your duplicity, hypocrisy, deception, many other words that I've heard describe you tonight, over and over and over and over. Enjoy the seat you're sitting in, because you're all on your way out. Eugene is the third Zionist that I've seen here in 4 months. Does that tell you something? They don't show their faces here because you know why? Because they know the truth. 97% of Israel, 97% of Israelis support more bombing, more carpet bombing, more destruction of hospitals, of universities, of murdering of babies, of babies, newborn babies were dying because there's no caffeine allowed into Gaza. Caffeine. What you sit and drink every day, caffeine. They've never had clean water prior to October 7th. Oh, you know, Hamas broke the peace. What peace? You mean the starvation and the complete siege of all borders and all sea?
Thank you. Okay, I think this is our last commenter. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor.
No, I'm sorry, one more after you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and respected council members. The sheer disregard for our request for a ceasefire resolution has been very disappointing. Why is a significant segment of our community being dismissed? People continue to be killed as we speak. We are beginning to think that we are not really heard or included as members of the Farmington Hills community. When are you going to act? If not now, when? When? I just want to know when. What is preventing you from standing for humanity? If you don't speak up against the genocide, you are complicit. Does the city of Farmington Hills want to be known as complicit in a genocide, albeit indirectly? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last public comment. Good evening.
And thank you for your accessibility. I appreciate that. Only the last speaker because of my knees. There were some powerful things said tonight, and I don't expect to be able to speak as those people did, but I felt the need to be here.
Sorry, name and where you live, please.
My name's Jenny, and I live in Livonia. I'm here in favor of a city council ceasefire resolution. I'm confused about prior decisions around the Ukraine and Armenia. I heard the call. I invited friends that live in Farmington Hills, and some were surprised that this conversation is lasting so long. I've learned, Mayor, that you've got some fans in the city that were surprised that this conversation is lasting this long. With overwhelming support tonight and many people who have spoken for 5 meetings. I live in Farmington. I live in Livonia. I work in Farmington Hills. I shop here. I'm helping to raise your children. About 15 years ago, when I accepted a job offer here, I was coming from Detroit. And the thing that surprised me the most was the diversity. I had an assumption growing up in Detroit that Farmington Hills was just another white suburb. I was excited to have this opportunity to work in Farmington Hills. And even more excited when I learned that the city of Farmington Hills was proud of the diversity of the city. I'm not feeling that from the city council tonight. Phrases I've heard tonight that I deeply identify with, and I imagine many of you do as well. I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. I am rooted in love and justice. My heart is broken. My heart breaks for the people and children of Palestine. My heart also breaks for the children right here in Farmington, your children and grandchildren and their friends. I want our children to feel safe here. Their families, history, the land as they know it or have yet to experience it is being erased. They feel that right here in Farmington Hills. And they feel it happening without the resistance of city leaders like yourself. Some are organizing, some are speaking up, some did a fine job tonight. Some are making TikTok videos. Many of them are taking their power, and many of them are also scared. I had a conversation with somebody recently that said, this was a brown-skinned person, if they'll do this, if our government will do this to people in Palestine, what makes them think they won't do it to us right here in the United States? A number of children from very young ages are here watching today, watching you, learning from you. A young person sitting next to me in the beginning when you were talking about letters that had come in and you weren't sure how to pronounce the teacher's name. She knew how to pronounce the teacher's name. Probably somebody from her high school. And I was thinking back to when I was in high school and how exciting that would have been to hear something at City Council that was connected with my high school. But then I went on to think of all the other things that she's learning tonight that don't connect with the things she's learning in her civics classes. I learned the little boy behind me when you went to recess asked his dad, "What's that?" He was probably 5 or 6. He said, you know, his dad said, you know what recess is. You have recess at school. And the little boy smiled. They're learning all kinds of things. Please go home and think about what you've been teaching them and what you can teach them as we move forward. Most importantly, will they feel like a part of this community, that their lives and voice matters here? Our grandchildren and great-grandchildren will ask, how did this happen? What we did. I'm hoping you'll be able to say you did something. I lost my dad 2 years ago. I'm struggling with it greatly. And I'll never forget this time he walked up to me. He was about 78 years old. And he said to me with this book in hand, I have something very important to tell you. And he read me this poem written by, I'm going to mispronounce the name, but Martin Niemöller, who is a Lutheran priest, minister. This was written in 1946, post-war. He was a German. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew.
Thank you.
Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Thank you.
Okay. Any additions to the agenda this evening, council? Okay. In that case, I'll take a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Moved and supported. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned, council. Good night. Good night, Farmington Hills.